is exposures in higher education. Exposure and liability are not the same. So liability is a legal term, obviously, where the courts might find the institution liable for something. When we talk about exposure, we're talking about the whole thing. So let's say there's a lawsuit, we find out we're liable, but the damages aren't that much. So when we look at exposure, we look at damages, how this affects our reputation, how it might affect enrollment. So exposure isn't just the legal term of, gee, are we going to be liable? We may not want something in the news. So when I talk about a couple of things, I'm going to talk about these things create exposure, but not necessarily a lot of liability in terms of monetary damages or something like that. So basically, exposure or liability arises out of tort law, contract law, legislation like the ADA, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, or even the Constitution. And when you're talking about higher education, always distinguish between a private entity and a public entity. The reason why is because in a public entity, there are certain additional rights that the Constitution provides, generally the First and the Fourth Amendment, right to free speech, and then again, also there's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, it's the same thing. So a public institution is basically considered the state, the government, an arm of the state. So again, always keep that in mind when you're talking about exposure, because sometimes you might have a private entity which is subject to, let's say, invasion of privacy under a tort action, but at the same time, it could be also, if it's a public entity, it could be subject to an invasion of privacy as well as a Fourth Amendment unreasonable search or seizure. So you can have more claims under a public entity. Okay, so when we're talking about exposures, we talk. Go ahead.
I just want to know what tort law is.
Well, okay, great question, and feel free to ask any questions. Actually, that makes me more comfortable. I didn't know how much you all know, but
Nothing.
Okay, well, I'm real happy then because I tried to make it not as legal as a usual legal kind of presentation. A tort is basically a slip and fall. A tort is an accident, a car accident, or a tort is anything where someone is injured. What you really need to know about tort law is generally it's state law. It's not federal law. And generally it's not by a legislation. It's basically case law. Okay, so a tort could, I'm coming to you and I hit you. That could be battery. That's the tort. And you can sue me in court for battery and you have to prove damages. I was humiliated, I got my teeth knocked out or something like that. That's considered a tort. Now, if I hit you, it could also be considered a criminal, under our criminal penal code also. But generally court is a civil kind of thing. So does that answer the question?
Where does tort come from? Do you know? Like, why is it called that?
It's just tort law. It's not worth it.
They use that term a lot.
Latin.
They use that term a lot in the
Latin
VA.
for
It's
something
British.
I think it comes from the British system, common law.
Yes, it does. It does. It's not worth it.
What does the word tort mean?
Well, I'll email you, all right? Or you can look it up.
But it's a type of claim. So
It's a wrongful act or an infringement.
yeah, it's
That's
a
what
type
a tort
of claim.
is?
Yep.
Okay.
You injured me.
Okay.
I was driving, you hit my car, I got injured. It's an injury, kind of make me whole again. So we do have some tort. The other liability rights from contract law. So let's say as an institution we enter into a contract, we may break it or something like that, and so then we're liable for any damages. The new and emerging type of contract law, which is very interesting, is there are some cases out there where students are saying that they've entered into a contract with the higher education institution. They did not get the education that they contracted for, and therefore they want damages under that law. So it's more of an emerging area. It's not real strong. There are not a lot of cases, but the point is exposure. If we're not clear about what we're going to provide or the services, that creates an exposure. We could get sued. It doesn't mean we're liable, but the exposure is we can get sued if our documents are not in place, or we didn't, accurately document, the course or the syllabus or something like that. So the other types of exposures is legislation, usually ADA. So ADA says American Disabilities Act, you have to have reasonable accommodations. So we have to do that. That's a legislative type of exposure. And then also, what people don't talk about is internal policies and procedures. If we don't follow our internal policies and procedures, a lot of times that can make us breach a contract because we didn't follow our procedures. An example could be someone was terminated, and let's say we had a code of conduct for a faculty, and we said, you can only get fired for X, Y, and Z. And we didn't follow that procedure. We terminated them for X, Y, Z, and X, or whatever. That could be create a liability. So in those cases, generally, we don't have a lot of, those policies are very vague so that you can interpret them on a case-by-case basis, not to hold yourself to any specific criteria all the time. So those are the general exposure. So why don't we start with tort, which you were talking about. A tort under law means that there's some kind of breach of duty, or there's a standard of care. I am somehow supposed to do something right. So that means when I walk down the hallway, I have to create a standard of care where I can't zoom down and knock everybody over. That's a standard of care that is not in the legislature, but it's a tort somewhere in common law. It happened. So as an institution, we could breach that. So let's talk about some tort exposure that I've seen. School-sponsored activities. Here's a case. It didn't happen at MATC. So, but the school has sponsored a drag race somewhere, and a student died.
Why was the school sponsoring the drag?
Is this true?
This is a true story.
Wow.
Out in California.
What was the drag, why was it, well, I guess I
Okay.
don't know what we're
Here
talking
I
about.
was here in Wisconsin, so
It
I
didn't
have to
happen
drag
shot
race.
here. Okay, so, but the point is, it was school sponsored. So then, the question is, was the school negligent? Did the school not have proper safety precautions? Even though you're talking about adults, people who are over 18, was the school negligent? Well, either way, the school's gonna get sued because it has deep pockets. And the school has an insurance policy. So either way, but that goes back to exposure. Would I authorize it? No. And most people would not, but it's happened. And the interesting thing about it is our insurance at MATC, our policy has kind of a catch-all provision. So if we do something that's kind of outside the mission of the college, they may not cover it. So you gotta be real careful with your insurance policies too. So you gotta be careful about what you do. And as an administrator, you gotta think about these things. Are we insured? Is this likely to happen? Okay, here's another one. Failure to supervise the classroom. There was a case where a it was a technical college, actually it was MATC. And the faculty member did leave the classroom, and people know about it. And a student was injured, and I don't know if their arm was cut off, but there was a lot of machinery in the classroom. So the question is, were we negligent? Eventually, the case did settle, and I think, it rarely happens, but it did happen. So one of the things you have to make sure is, as an administrator, there are those safety cautions depending on the class. So some classes, you may not require that much supervision, but if you're talking about an 18-year-old who has never been around this type of machinery, maybe, as an institution, we have to require perhaps faculty to be in the room at all times. Yeah.
So what if the faculty was in the room the whole time, though, and this person still was injured? Does that change it?
It would change the issue of whether or not it was more of the student's fault, he's just clumsy, or whether maybe we were doing our due diligence, because remember, a tort is the standard of care. So maybe we were doing it, and then the student just kind of, just screwed up or something like that. These things are done on a case-by-case basis. More than likely, it's still settled. The outcome would still be the same.
Well, then the faculty member can give their side of the story, because they can say, I supervised them, I did what I did, whereas if they're not there, they can't give that, you know, they can't say
Well, I
that.
figured that they would still sue even though the liability is there.
Right, and they were still sue, so, that's why we have insurance.
Attorney.
I wanna, okay, I gotta move faster. Contact sports, we've had cases where if a certain, and not in MATC, but I've read cases where, let's say, 'cause we don't have those many sports, but when you're talking about football or a lot of contact sports, students get injured playing against each other. In those cases, generally the courts have said, no, these are adults, they know the risk, so usually an institution is not negligent under these circumstances. The other one was the battery by teacher to student. Generally doesn't happen in higher education. You might see it in K through 12. You know, that happens where, you know, corporal punishment sometimes is considered battery. It may not be even a lot of damages. Sometimes students just say, well, I got hit, you know, you could be a situation where a teacher has to restrain a student, and that might be considered battery. So not necessarily even under, so the goal is to have a lot of teaching, and usually the institution, once you get there, will have a lot of training on what you can and cannot do. Sexual assault. You can have a situation where if it's public or private institution, someone gets sexually assaulted, and they come back and they sue. They say the security was inadequate, there wasn't light, the doors weren't locked, the response time wasn't good. So because of that, the institution may be negligent. So as a result of that, what do? We have security 24 hours. We have make sure there's adequate lighting in the parking lots. If we know of certain crimes, we might tell people to be more careful. Those are ways that we create our standard of care. So are there any questions on tort exposure? So basically how it works, somebody, go ahead.
Most of these are personal injury.
These
Does that
are
also
personal
cover,
injury
like,
tort.
property too?
Property too.
Okay.
You could have an example where suppose people leave their cars in your parking lot and somehow their car gets damaged. They might just sue saying, okay, it's your fault because, I don't know. They come up with something. So it could be that, yeah.
You mentioned that with certain things, it's determined that, you know, the individual involved kind of knew the risks, like in playing
Yeah,
American football.
contact sports, sure.
All right. And like who determines that, like the judge or?
Yeah,
Okay.
most of that is really,
It's based on context and culture.
it's all done generally on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
There are a lot of cases where generally when we do the analysis, we look for cases really similar, and the common law does set forth
So,
kind of, this is what you should do.
and in certain parts of California, perhaps drag racing is a common activity and people will know the risks of being involved in such.
No, I don't know, but somehow school did it.
That's a
So-
stretch, that's a stretch, Dick, Jerry. That's a stretch.
But it's not, I mean, we're sort of laughing about the drag race, but there was a case this summer in New York City where a teacher took her sixth grade class to a beach. It was approved by the school.
That's right. the drown.
All the parents signed permission slips and the student drowned. And there were no lifeguards and so on. So, I mean, these things, they don't have to be as outrageous
Yeah.
as a drag race
Right, right,
to involve a lot of tort issues.
Right, so, and the thing is, you can't always stop people from suing. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you try to have some type of standard and you follow it, number one, you're gonna reduce the risk of something happening to someone, and two, you're gonna reduce your liability. So, continuing on tort, something that nobody really thinks about is slander. Where are we? We're under a defamation, slander, and invasion of privacy. And the reason why I bring this up is it does come up in some contexts, and basically I'll tell you what it is. Defamation, slander is basically if I tell a lie on someone, generally publicly, but it doesn't always have to be publicly, and somehow it ruins that person's reputation. So let's talk about that. One of the emerging issues is school-sponsored social media websites. So now I think a lot of these schools are sponsoring, I think, Facebook or something like that. And now you could have students, if it's not moderated, maybe making some defamatory remarks against other students, and you have the bullying, the harassment, and there's a lot of emotional distress. because it's school sponsored and maybe even school controlled, there are some lawsuits now saying that the school is responsible because they did not shut the website down, or they didn't have a moderator, perhaps watching out for the things that are said, or a moderator removing sometimes some slanderous remarks. So the law is not quite strong in that area yet, but it is an emerging area. If you want to do your research, you can look at some of those areas. Here's an interesting one, and this is generally for a marketing department, but administrators too. Sometimes, let's say you have a situation where you have a student, and the student agrees to have their picture in a brochure. And there was an incident, and not at MATC, but I think, and I don't even think it was higher education, but the brochure came out with these men, and I think underneath the brochure it says, this is what HIV looks like, or something like that. So you had these men who all of a sudden had agreed, but they were like, this is telling people I have HIV and I don't, you know. So it was almost like this ad was portraying these men in a false light, and it was not what they had intended it to happen. So they sued for basically defamation. And so one of the things in the marketing department when they're preparing their brochures in higher education is to make sure, number one, we get permission to use a student's image, but also let them know this is how we're going to use it and do it in a positive image all the time. I mean, it's unlikely to happen, but it could happen, so people should be aware of it if you don't have the preventive control. So most people in marketing are already kind of briefed on the law and stuff like that, but you never know. All right, here's the other very small, limited liability is using students' pictures and brochures without their permission. Generally, if you take a picture in a public street and you can see it from public view, you can use it. But if it's in a classroom or something, you should get the student's permission. Otherwise, it could be considered an invasion of privacy. It's unlikely to happen. A lot of students like having their pictures in the brochure, but it's something that is a precaution that we always have to take. Now, the next one I want to talk about is libel and defamation during an investigation of an employee. So a lot of times as administrators, you all are going to be supervising people, and maybe there's some complaints about someone, a sexual harassment, a complaint or something, where you have to go and then you're going to have to do an investigation. You cannot talk about these things because sometimes if it's a false accusation or something like that, it could be considered defamation or slander, and that employee could sue the agency for that.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often because most of the time we take precautions. People don't discuss these things. One of the worst situations would be where an administrator said something to the media. Yes, we're investigating this person for this, this, and this, and he did this, this, and this. And so generally you want to have somebody trained who would know not to say these things. Yeah.
I just had a question, both with the use of images and then also the defamation aspect. How much are institutions liable for students' work that they do in the classroom, especially with a lot of projects now moving into like podcasts or YouTube videos or things like that? I work in the library at Madison College, and we have a lot of students that come in and take either pictures or take videos, and we try to discourage them from doing those things of their classmates when they're in a public space of the library.
Okay.
Is the institution at risk of exposure in those cases, or like in student newspapers too?
I would say generally not so much. I would not say that we would be breaching a standard because students still have freedom to act. You know, it's generally when it's something where the only time I can see a huge liability is when, not huge, but when a student is using a lot of Madison College equipment and that hurts another person, and
Right.
we don't have standards to say, okay, this is how you use equipment, or if you use it, you know, you're responsible for everything. Because remember, we are talking about adults still.
Right.
No.
What about a blog? Let's say there's a blog, right? And it's an anonymous blog. We currently have a blog right now. The Department of Veterans Affairs is a blog out there, and they're constantly writing negative things about the secretary, about myself. We ignore it, of course. That's defamation of character, but it's anonymous. And where does free speech fall into this?
Well, defamation is a real complex thing. It's not necessarily defamation. If they're saying things of opinion, then it's not considered defamation. Defamation would consider if I came in and said, Joe Schmo did this to a child and it wasn't true. Or that would be a false statement to hurt someone's reputation.
Okay.
Or that would be different if I said something like, Joe Schmo is I just don't like him. You know, that's your opinion.
What if someone said something like, some such politician doesn't like old people?
That's a
That's-
public figure. So
Yeah.
the standards for defamation is different. If they're in the public eye, they don't really have a strong defamation
Oh,
claim.
so
They
it
have
could
to,
be kind of-
well, they have to, yeah, and they would have to prove an additional standard of maliciousness, and it's just not a real strong claim.
Do you see any of this with faculty employment
Yep.
issues?
Yeah, and well, you could,
Can you?
I know that you might have faculties who don't like each other, and they might send emails out to people, all sorts of that. And the institution does have policies to say you cannot use our infrastructure for these things. So, and I'll get to a little bit of that, of how, because everything comes down to reduce exposure through basically policies of conduct, and because if we reduce it at that level, we don't have to worry so much about the lawsuits.
Can I ask a quick question? What is considered a public figure? Like, would the chancellor at UW be considered a public figure?
Good question.
That's a good question.
Or like Jerry is an alderman, or,
Yes.
so is he
Yeah.
I would say
considered
yeah.
a public
I would-
figure,
I
even
would-
though nobody cares?
I would say, the courts look at a lot of different circumstances, but I would say, yeah. I mean,
In both cases,
if
even
the
if you're.
person puts themselves in the public eye,
Uh-huh,
they definitely
Yeah,
are a
that's a
public figure.
okay.
Very cool.
And I need to ask the students to hold the questions because our time is limited and make sure that Carolyn provides an overview.
You're holding on.
I gotta get this over,
Oh.
okay, so, where are we?
Page 2.
Okay, I'm done with, let me move on to slander. Slander is basic defamation, but it's a verbal. Okay, so if I spread a rumor that someone had HIV, that's automatic. If you say a person is criminal, those are automatic. You don't have to prove damages, you know. So because it's ruining to someone's reputation if it's false, you know, and I'm trying to hurt them. I'm trying to keep them from a job. The other one that's coming up a lot of times is employee references. So a lot of institutions have embarked on, we don't give employee references, we just say the person worked there. And so by instituting that policy, then they take control over the individual supervisors. You know, so maybe one supervisor might not defame someone, but another would. So if you just have one blanket policy, we don't give references either good or bad. We just say that the person worked there. So that's how exposure is reduced. Okay, so the next one is so risk reduction. Ongoing staff training and confidentiality, with safety precautions in the buildings, and adequate response by the agency. As soon as we know there's a problem, we gotta move in as fast as possible to try to rectify it to make sure we're not liable. And the other thing is insurance. Obviously, that's how you gotta make sure the institution has insurance. So, and for administrators, what you need to know is if you have an event, make sure that event is covered. Because most of the time they are, but sometimes you don't know. So check with your risk manager to say, is this going to be covered? And it depends on how risky the event is too. You know, having a speaker here, you don't need insurance. Having a drag race or something, you do. Governmental immunity for public entities. There is some limit on tort damages under certain circumstances. There is some governmental immunity, but it's not blanket or across the board as with any area of law. Disability discrimination. All institutions, whether you're public or private, you're going to definitely fall under either the ADA, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. That's basically for private institutions that get federal funds. IDEA is another disability legislation. And then don't forget, there's state and local ordinances. So when you look at the law, you may have 5 laws that apply to you. So you want to just do what you need to do so you don't have 5 different lawsuits under different laws. But basically, disability discrimination applies both to students and employees, that an employer or institution has to make reasonable accommodations. But reasonable doesn't mean anything and everything reasonable. What happens is people can sue under certain legislative, and they do have a private right of action that they've been discriminated against in some instances. So there is the potential of a lawsuit. Generally, what I've seen most of the time is we get complaints from the administrative body, like DWD, where they don't really get a lot of damages. It's more of an administrative body where we need to rectify the situation. So that's an exposure that we have to do. You don't want to lose your federal funds if you don't comply with the ADA. So some of the things that we do provide in terms of reasonable accommodation for students, attendance. So if a class requires you to attend, 100% of all the classes, sometimes disability, they might accommodate it and make it, maybe 60, 70% of the class time and try to make up some other way. We provide note takers, videotape the classroom. Then there's, test taking, some accommodations during test taking. The other thing to reduce exposure for disability is that we have professionals make the determination. Faculty or administration should never make it, they're not trained, they don't know this stuff, they don't work with these doctors. It's gotta be professionals who do the assessment of whether somebody's disabled, and also they have to make their accommodations. And they go through all kinds of training for that. And that's why we reduce it and make sure the onus is on our Disability Resource Center and never on the faculty. So let's talk about some examples of disability discrimination. I want to talk about, are we on examples? Okay, so I want to talk about how we have to weigh the accommodation. So on one hand, we're liable if we don't, but then when we make these accommodations, we got to be careful that we don't impact other students. So one of the, I'll skip the webpage. Let's talk about Segway users. This is a new one. The DOJ has changed their regulations, and we have to allow people who are using Segways. Anybody know what a Segway is?
Yeah.
Okay, they can use those now. And if we ask them, are you disabled? They don't necessarily have to provide proof. So we have to let them rule the halls. So
In the school?
in the school. So the problem is you got to make sure that these people don't run into people. But actually, I think there was an incident where the Segway user may have done that. So that makes us liable on a tort issue. So in order to reduce exposure, then we have to come up with safety standards. And if we don't come up, so we go back to the tort issue of what is our standard of care. So we say if you're going to use the Segway, you're going to, go so many miles an hour, and just have the same safety standards that we use for a wheelchair. And then we have to notify the individual, and then notify people so they'll know that he's allowed to use the Segway, this machine, and then also notify people that this is new, and then we're balancing it out, we're reducing the risk.
So you're kind of with that one, you're liable on both sides?
On both sides, and that's what you really have to, it's gonna be a balancing act, and I don't wanna get into all the details of the law, because I'll never get through this. Let's talk about animals. Some people have to have the animals in the classroom, but then there might be somebody else who's allergic to the animal. Or there's, in public accommodation, it's a little different than in the classroom. But in a public accommodation, a person's not required to show that their dog has been trained by a professional. Sometimes they can do their own training. So there's a liability, because if they didn't do the training right, we don't know if the dog is safe or da-da-da-da. We have to make sure that, okay, you can have the dog here, but if it's unsafe, then we have to take precautions to ask you to leave right away before we get sued for a dog bite or something like that. So again, you're balancing the exposure of the risk. We might get sued for the dog bite because we didn't get the dog out of the place on time when we saw that the dog was obviously a risk, or At the same time, we have to make sure the person has an accommodation. So, is it likely to happen? No. But it can. And so a lot of, the ones I'm talking about now, yes.
I was just wondering, on all of those cases, is it, the individual's responsibility to let the, school know that they have these disabilities, or are you sort of set up to expect that they're gonna be people showing up?
Okay, you're asking, it depends on which law it falls under.
Okay.
Let's say because it's a public institution or a private institution that accommodates, like Target becomes a public accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
That falls under a different law. At that point, so we're not talking about in the classroom. We're talking about, does this person have a right to bring their animal into a public accommodation? Which is a different, there'll be a different set of laws for the reasonable accommodation. And that, we cannot require them to prove that they're disabled. But we can ask them. But if they're not operating the vehicle or the dog in a safe way, then we can try to, ask them to leave or something like that. So, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Next one, we're on copyright, right?
Yes.
Okay, low risk, but it's high risk because you have teacher turnover, particularly with part-time. Under copyright laws, a lot of teachers, they have their course pack. They cannot go around and take somebody's book, Xerox it, and put it into their course pack. Otherwise, they violate copyright laws. Same thing with online learning. There are certain rules that the law allows you to use someone's work under certain circumstances. But it's still a liability where we don't want teachers who don't understand copyright law to start violating them. It's low risk, but we have ongoing training, and you have a copyright manual. This is what you can, which is what you cannot do, and that's how we reduce exposure. So there's copyright issues, particularly now new with the new website. So let's say the marketing department wants to create a beautiful web page. They have to know that when they go out on the website to grab a picture, that they should have permission for that. So we have a system set up to make sure that people get permission to use other people's work. But it's an exposure because someone can sue for a violation of copyright law. So here's a new interesting emerging brochures and web pages. What we put on our web page or brochure should be accurate. There have been some cases where I think sometimes in the catalog, and not in Wisconsin, but I think they were out in California again, where I think they had promised if you get a B average, you can go ahead and transfer to another school automatically. A lot of times that's not 100% true. It's got to be a B average in those core certain courses. And so if a person comes in and they say, I enrolled because you said X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden I can't get into the school, you didn't tell me. You all were negligent. Generally, it's unlikely to happen because as the people go through the counseling process of a program, it's pretty clear what they should and should not do. But this is happening more in private institutions that are new, online institutions where they're doing a lot of recruiting. And so sometimes people get an idea, this is the contract that I have with this institution, and it didn't work out, I'm suing for something. So that doesn't happen. Okay, the next big issue is private information, privacy. So everybody heard of FERPA? Okay, FERPA is just one of the privacy laws, and basically that just means you can't give out student educational records, period, and there are a whole lot of exceptions around that. What you need to know about FERPA is regulated by the Department of Education, but there's no private right of action. So that means a student cannot sue me and get a tort action or get thousands of dollars, because I violated FERPA. they would just go to the Department of Education. And their enforcement, it's not real strong. They just say, okay, do this, and we do it, and we comply. So I just want you to think about exposure in terms of what are the damages. Everybody go, ooh, FERPA. Well, it's not as bad as where you really could have your liability under other kinds of privacy laws, particularly the tort law. So if we allow some damage to happen, somebody gets their identity stolen, they might come back and say, okay, I have damages now. You all were negligent. My information came out, and look what happened to me. So that's kind of where the liability in terms of monetary would be for us. There are a whole lot of other privacy laws. Obviously, we have a duty to keep students' financial records. We're exposure because of all the computer hacking. People come in, they might try to get into our system, and we have identity theft. So how do we safeguard that? We have to have all kinds of compliance things. We have to pay vendors a lot of money to make sure that our systems are secure, and we have to close a lot of security doors. But it's because it's a liability. So a lot of money is spent really on those security systems, email systems. Emails are a portal into a company's, if you're in the system, they can be a portal into a company's database. So we have to be careful about how people use this email or deactivate it on time, once the student leaves. So these are liabilities, risks, usually under the tort law. Again, the institution, you have a duty to keep employee information confidential. We've had situations where if a student is printing out their transcripts, we want to make sure that the computer is next to the student. The printer. There was a time when the printer was downstairs and the student had to run downstairs, and we're like, no. If it's confidential information, if they're going to print out their transcript, the printer should be right there for them. So those are small things that we do to reduce the exposure. Emerging technology. Generally, an institution could be negligent if we allow the unlawful use of our equipment. So right now it's illegal to download a lot of music, So we have policies and procedures in place where student is prohibited from doing so. And if they break it, then they're subject to the code of conduct, and they could be disciplined, because we could get sued for allowing that. So those are our exposures, no legal downloads. The other thing is emails. A lot of colleges are providing students with email. Email is a service that you provide. So it's not a personal Yahoo or whatever, it's their email. So in order to reduce exposure, because you don't want one student bullying another student on your equipment, because that opens you up to sexual harassment or something like that. So you have to have guidelines on how you can use this email system. Yeah.
Are there difficulties, because there are colleges that are switching over to Gmail accounts for all of their emails? So.
And we did not do that for that reason. One of the, and she brings up a point, a lot of colleges are switching over to Gmail because it's free. Our concern was that we were unable to get the third-party vendors to say, we'll be liable if there's a security breach. And until we can get that, Madison College is not going to do that. So we just spend the money on making sure that students' emails are safe. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the biggest area of exposure is employment. And the reason why I say that is because it's where the dollars go. High defense costs, high costs, and just generally trying to keep employees not doing anything outside of the scope of their employment, which could be negligent. So when we talk about employment, one of the things we want to talk about is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Basically, you cannot basically discriminate in employment on basis on race, gender, sex, national origin. Retaliation is a separate claim. Religion or handicap. So basically, when we terminate, if someone's terminated, we want to make sure that they were terminated for reasons other than those reasons because we could be liable. Basically, in Wisconsin, we're employee at will state, which means that you can terminate someone for any reason but the wrong reasons. So if basically, and so it would be in a protected class. So if you get terminated for the wrong reason, and then there's a lawsuit, you know, it's a huge cost. And it's just something that shouldn't happen in any institution, but, so that's where, you know, there's a lot of training, make sure this shouldn't happen. If someone complains about discrimination or harassment, there should be, institutions should look into it right away and try to rectify the situation, because if they don't, they could be more liable later on. So that's where the biggest area is, again, employment. Because a lot of times, people are just gonna sue if they get terminated. And it gets really bad when you have faculty who are tenured, because tenured staff sometimes have constitutional rights, and that's a whole body of another law, but it's almost like a property right. So again, if it's a public institution, we talked about that, it kicks in a whole nother constitutional right, so, and that can be expensive. So basically, for employment, an agency must exercise reasonable care to eliminate discrimination and harassment. If the agency does nothing, it's more liable. And then here you have higher compensatory damages. So if the agency is found negligent or guilty or something like that, it could have higher damages than, let's say, FERPA or something like that. So sexual harassment, that's a big exposure also, because it's covered by several legislative acts. It occurs on any level, staff to staff, faculty to student, student to student. And so one of the things people don't realize is student to student, if we don't take precautions to try to prevent that, we could be liable because we're allowing the environment to be hostile for students. So, and that, there's a Title IX, you can lose federal funds if you don't do what you're supposed to be doing under Title IX. Okay, so I'm losing people, so.
No, I always stand because I have bad knees and it feels better to stand.
So are there any questions about Title IX? But those are your biggest exposures if you really want to do research about, because the exposure is at all levels. And that's where a lot of money goes into defending ourselves. Here's, it's funny, in back to sexual harassment, there was a complaint to the Department of Education where there was a school-sponsored, I think, social network. It was like a blog, and someone had put some pretty, either pornography or something on that blog, and someone complained that it was a hostile environment. And so the school, they had to do an investigation to see, was the school negligent? Department of Education basically, they really never got to that point because I think the social media site was shut down or something like that early on. But it just goes to show, again, how these new emerging technology is now making institutions more liable. And then the scariest issue that's really coming up, and I'm not strong on this area, is suicidal students and students with a mental illness. The courts are now creating a higher standard than before of what we need to do to respond to students when we see that a student is a danger to themselves or others. To the point where a school may be required to withdraw the student from school so that student can get help. And I think
But then they could get sued by the student for
that's
withdrawing them against
absolutely,
their will.
absolutely. So there's new criteria though that is, and that's exactly it. It's the exposure on both sides. The student will say, well, I didn't get my due process, da 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 da. And that's actually a case out east, where the institution was found more negligent, and so the law still is shaking that area, but it's best to err on the side of withdraw the student than allow the student to, I think in one case, the student had set the dorms on fire. So that's what happened. So I would choose just withdraw, choose that lawsuit over the other ones. So, Are there any questions? So I'm done with kind of some of the things that we could get sued for. Are there any questions on that? Okay, so I'm supposed to do some kind of case analysis, and what I've chosen is academic freedom. Everybody's familiar with that. Academic freedom is more in a public institution than a private because, again, it falls under our First Amendment. And I just chose this case because basically it just recently happened, and it's going to reaffirm what administrators, kind of the double-edged sword of liability on the employment side versus, making sure that we don't have sexual harassment or hostile environment for the students. So basically, Perry Mills was a tenured theater professor, and he was real animated, and that was his teaching style, and he thought he had to do a lot of things to kind of pump up the class. But he had been getting complaints over a period of time. Apparently, he used foul language toward the students and to employees. So that kicked in another liability because now not only are you doing it to students but to other employees. So now you have it kicks in another kind of standard that he violated. So he told one cancer patient who had chemotherapy, if you can't even put your piece up for class, then you should die of cancer.
No.
He referred to a female student in the classroom as shit for brains, and referred to an overweight student as a 400-pound canary who warbles nothingness.
But this is a theater class, so
This-
we're up to
Well,
drama.
this is what he's, saying, that this is how he teaches, this is how he promotes the learning experience.
But you see,
So-
I think the theater and the drama thing
That-
adds an element to this case,
It-
because,
It's true.
It's true, you're absolutely right, it boosts
this was an
his
economics
argument.
class, be different, it'd be a little more clear.
Well, the courts have said that he used that as guise, because some of the things that he did really was not promoting education. It was creating a hostile environment. But you're absolutely right, and you were on target about that analysis. So, he also used racially and sexually demeaning language in the classroom to certain individuals. And so finally, he was put on administrative leave for really violating the faculty code of conduct. That was it, okay. He sued, of course, and he said, no, the faculty code of conduct is wrong because my First Amendment rights say that I can do this. The court said, in the end, no. The court said, First Amendment does not protect against insults and profanity. And that they also talked about how some of the language he used really did not promote education. So again, I talk about this exposure because it's a two-sided exposure. On one side, he's going to sue. He's going to say, oh, my First Amendment, I was wrongfully discharged. On the other side, we still have a duty to protect the students. Make sure they have a good working environment, good learning environment, and then also that there's not sexual or racial harassment in the classroom, or even emotional distress. And then there are other exposures. Do you want this to happen in your classroom or in your school? Is this something that you want to be known for? So that's another exposure. So that case, you can go find it online. You can actually just Google it if you wanted to read the entire case, because there's a lot of other issues that I don't want to tap into, but it would be great if you could read it, because it's a good First Amendment claim. And what?
Was he fired or was he
put
reprimanded
in
and brought
line.
back to work?
He's back to work.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
He's tenured. And tenure is also a property right under, but if he continues to do it, maybe they'll go ahead and fire him. It's a possibility, because the courts did rule on his side. So what I would suggest in terms of resources, because you're going to need ongoing cases, there's something called the ASCA Law and Policy Report, and you can pull it up. Just go ahead and do a Google search for it. I think, what is his name? Gabala? I think the person's name is, and that has ongoing cases, particularly on the student side, where I think most of you would probably deal with more on the student side, and the inside higher education. That would be one. So let me see if I can find the name. Gary Kavala is the person's name, and he is,
It's not the same one.
So that concludes my short discussion. And do you have a lot of questions, or I hope you do.
So this is a situation that's happening right now at my college. There's a student, freshman student, who is severely emotionally distressed by being required to watch rated R movies in class, and
There you
it's
go.
class content related. And so I thought I'd just ask the question because of the fact of the number of cases that I don't know what to do, so.
Is the student considered disabled?
As it get, well, she's saying it's against her values to watch rated R.
So it's against her religion?
I don't really.
I think the student would probably have to, it would probably be part of the class criteria, so, I mean, I don't have all the facts, so I
Right,
can't
right,
make a
right.
judgment on that, but I would think the student would have to just, deal with that, this is higher education, it's
Right.
higher learning, because otherwise the student can leave the class. And I'm sure that the syllabus and the coursework has been approved, and
Yeah.
there's probably long-standing criteria. Go ahead.
Sort of related to this, but just in general, even if, even if this student does not really have the right or whatever to say, no, I don't wanna do that, how often would you say that an institution is just like, fine, we'll find something else for you to watch just because they don't wanna deal with,
I don't know, I think
or
it's
any
because
kind of issues like with that,
you
with that professor?
you don't want to create too much of a standard where then, students can do anything they want,
Uh-huh.
because then you create this practice, and then one student sees the other student got to do it, why can't I? So
Yeah.
generally, we try not to, the faculty have huge discretion as to what they can and cannot do in the classroom, so that kind of protects the organization, as a whole. So, there is always that policy, but in general, I don't think it's a good idea.
And it sets a precedence, because
It does.
then you lose, I'm having that problem, I had that problem at Stritch, had a student didn't like the assignment, said, well, I wanna do a different assignment, I wanna do an alternative assignment. I'm like, why? And she's like,
The
well,
student had a syllabus at the beginning of the
Right.
course, and the syllabus is considered, this is your contract, this is what the professor's gonna do, and these are the student expectations. So generally, if you get everything in that syllabus up front, you shouldn't have too much.
We've run into a couple cases where we have students that have, like short-term disabilities, like they have a broken arm in the writing hand. And every time we contact our disability center, they say that they aren't like set up to deal with students like that, and they kind of leave it up to the instructor's discretion on how they're gonna, and so we had one issue where the student was asking for more time to write her final exam because she had a cast on her arm, and the instructor was saying, well, you missed so many classes, and it was just this big, huge issue, and the disability center didn't want to touch it because they were like, it's a short-term disability, it's not, it's not that she has a long-term,
So they're saying under the law, and I don't know the facts, or I'm not professionally, I can't give a professional opinion on that one, but they're saying basically she's not disabled, so she
Right.
does not fall under having a reasonable accommodation. So what they're generally saying is because faculty does have broad discretion in their classrooms, they're saying if the faculty wants to go ahead and relax, make an accommodation under the faculty's discretion, the faculty can do that, and that's allowable.
but they don't have to if they don't want to.
No, not if they don't fall under the ADA, no.
Carolyn, in general, what advice would you give to this class if they had a legal issue on campus? Who do they contact at their particular institution?
their attorney.
It depends. Most of the legal issues that administration would encounter, a lot of them aren't things that have to yet go to an attorney. Because as administrators, you are expected to know a lot of the areas of the law. So you don't have to know the law, but you have to know what your internal policies are. And if you follow, because usually those policies have been developed by lawyers and other people who've done the research, But if you have an internal, in-house counsel, I would go ahead and email them. Otherwise, Google. Or listserv. I mean, I know other people have other associations that they belong to. Again, that magazine, Higher Education, talks about those things. But a lot of stuff probably should not be, it depends on how some of these things are handled more on the dean and associate dean level, not so much in the faculty level. And they generally know what
Do you know if, like at Madison College or just in general in higher education, is a syllabus, does a syllabus have to get approved by someone?
Oh, I think, yeah.
And by whom? I mean, is it by department?
So in my context, at the Carver College of Medicine, because we're accredited, there is a hierarchy and a structure to approve curriculum, medical education curriculum. That is empowered by the charter of the college, and in conjunction with our accreditation, that's where that curriculum is approved.
I'm not talking about curriculum, like, if you wanna say, listen, if you miss a class, you get an F.
Oh,
That somebody would have to say, yes, that's
Yes.
fine, that you
I
can
got
say
it.
that to your
Well,
students.
Typically, that's done by the dean. Unfortunately, we have to cut Carolyn off, but let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. Now, we can take a 2-minute stretch break, and we'll have our next speaker coming in. If you don't mind.
Oh, wait a minute, I think they're gonna proofreading it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's.
Just keep going.
Yes.
I'm sure I won't have to.
I did it this morning.
Check it. But I wanted the copy
No
of
worries.
it posted so that
Okay.
students have access to it.
Roy Rassman says.
I hope you learned something, so.
Le toca el dedo, mira. Hay 3 en cada día, entonces ya, no pueden coger 2 de arriba y de abajo.
Oh, that's right.
I have a feeling that,
These are de cada afternoon.
right, so I'll make sure, if he can't be there,
Okay,
I'll just step up.
okay, that's fine. Thanks.
I know Deb will, look to me, and make sure it went right.
Right, okay.
Statement right in file. And I spoke to a friend of mine. When I did that, they said that they could improve that, and discrimination is difficult to prove, you know. Okay, however, then,
At this point, you probably need to see it outside.
I did try to code This case happens in
Especially the general.
they are all married to the university. So a friend of mine was another medical that he has some problems in the
Okay,
past,
but jump that.
but I can
Okay.
find on my own.
Get you plugged in while students are on break.
So here's the university. So when I was only talking about talk, and I went on their website looking for, I'm not a legal experience.
Okay, so you're looking for another type of claim.
Yeah.
So
So what I saw now, yeah, defamation.
Good, good.
Okay.
Well, let me, I want to get the other speakers rolling.
Okay.
Okay, so let me, do I have everything? Okay, go ahead.
Have you driven up there yet?
I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
I
You
know.
gotta leave early there.
I'm gonna go the night before.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm gonna stay up there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
you're not
yes.
taking any chances, huh?
No.
I used to leave at 6 o'clock.
Oh my gosh, if I could prevent anything that can go wrong, I will. Which would be trying to get up
Right,
there.
right.
I was gonna show you, have you used this before?
No.
I'm recommending this for this year,
Okay.
just to see what they think about it.
I looked at that, but I didn't,
Sign it.
yeah.
And it's a
Tell
really
me what
good,
it is. Okay.
resource. It's basically, do you know the 2 volumes?
Yeah.
The 2 thick ones of the law of higher
Right,
education?
right.
This is a condensed version
Oh,
for
okay,
students.
okay.
So it's got,
What's the price tag?
70.
Okay, okay.
It's not too horrible, it's not like the
What's
$400
that
price tag
for?
on the,
Right, right.
on the 2-volume version.
Okay.
But, if they can purchase it, they can keep for a long time, just to,
Mhm. Well, if nothing else, I could put a copy in the reserve in the library.
That's a good
Can you
idea.
send me the information?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. And if you get any feedback on it,
Okay.
you know, let me know.
Yeah, by all means.
And my power steering is always
All set?
going out.
Okay.
But I went to the home place, I wanted to know something again, that I'm hoping.
Oh, they did.
They had like a custom,
You're telling me that I can say it.
I'll introduce you. You're okay.
Sometimes I just want to be able to say like,
Yes.
hey,
It's recording.
so it is.
They've been doesn't have to do with class, don't call me, because I don't want to talk to you. Right? I got enough friends, I don't need any more friends.
Ever.
Chew guard. Right, Pink? I got enough friends.
His name is not Pink.
Whatever. It's all the same to me, man.
Yeah, you're offending our speaker, he hasn't even started. FYI.
All right, Pink?
Ooh, Cottonhead over here. Hey, is this on tape, by the way? Whatever. Hey, are you gonna sue me for slander? Because I need to know if I need to buy a suit. Someone I go to court and I look good at, and that's always have
Well, the reason I asked was because my dad, teaches at Madison. And he had a thing on his, he just used the syllabus that everybody else used, that teaches that class. And then there was a kid that was like, oh, I couldn't come to class because he missed like a third of the classes. My dad's like, well, it says in here clearly, that if you miss this many classes, like, you can't pass.
Can we get two
Well, then he took
people
it to
from
the
in
dean and they're
here
like,
to?
well, we're
Half
half
out, but
They changed it. Look, Larry Moore.
Yeah, that was like maybe not this last school year, but the year before.
Bring your
You're probably
lunch.
because of him.
No, because if.
Yeah,
When you guys bring your lunch, I'm gonna go out
I
anyway,
can-
so.
It'll be a fun day.
It's not.
Wait for Christmas dinner.
Why don't we go out that day?
Fell you.
Drop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I think that's what my dad had in there, and like, they wouldn't do it then. Because this kid was like, well, I was sick, and blah, blah, blah.
It's gonna be a Christmas, it's a little celebration.
Well, we were gonna cover that in
I always
December.
put this could be changed, blah, 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 blah.
You don't wanna do it.
Sorry,
You
sorry.
want to
Freddie,
exclude a student, or you just lose this?
We're just
Does that
discussing
miss
this.
a quiz? Does that miss a quiz? Does that miss a quiz?
For lunch somewhere.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So what do you do by
Yes. And they said,
Don't deal.
we can't do anything. So it's just sort of annoying to me that like, they say that, and then they just.
Let's go for no. Hey, consider it considered.
Around Christmas time, I may be in a good mood.
You better wait till the 11th, and it's close.
Are we going anywhere after class today?
Thanks, Tom.
Right, oh, you
We
can see
can,
it.
we can go, I don't care. I think that this guy is on my board right now. My board, I don't know.
Okay, we have our next guest speaker. Let me introduce Ed. Ed has a great last name. I just love his last name. Ed Taylor is
All right.
Director of Marketing and Communications for Edgewood College. In that role, he's responsible for coordinating consistent, credible messages to all audiences through a wide range of channels. Those channels include the college's website, print publications, and traditional media outlets through public relations. Ed has been working in the corporate communications realm in the Madison area for almost 10 years. Prior to that, Ed served in both on-air and management roles in the broadcast news industry. He holds a master's degree in journalism from Northwestern University. He began his professional career in market research and consulting. He says way back in the 1980s.
Way back.
Let's welcome Ed Taylor.
Good morning, thank you. That sounds really great. It sounds like I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Which I guess is what I am doing. So today, we'll talk a little bit about media relations and how it's changed over the last, decade or so, at least from my perspective. And we'll take a look at how that's affected how I do the job of public relations and how it affects the job of communications, specifically at Edgewood College. I'll speak from my experience. I didn't write this book, for example. It's not a huge, long presentation, so it's my hope that we can go through some ideas, and that'll generate some discussion and some questions and some feedback. So I hope that that's what we can look forward to. This is me. If anybody ever wants anything to follow up or any questions that we don't think of yet this morning, edtaylor@edgewood.edu. A little different. I get my whole name on there, so that's kind of fun. Fewer outlets, fewer media outlets, and of those media outlets that are still out and alive and functioning and hanging in, folks are trying to do more with less. I think we're all probably familiar with the concept of trying to do more with less, especially if we're in public education, but certainly in private as well, and frankly in the private sector just in general. The other thing we'll touch on somewhat is how consumers have changed. I bet you just about everybody in the room has got a smartphone. I think I'm about the last one left with just a regular old-fashioned cell phone. Regular old-fashioned cell phone. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? It's in my pocket. You can't even tell I have it. So this is some information that I pulled up from the Pew Project for Excellence in Journalism. They're a fairly well-known national organization that's been doing media surveys for years and years and years. In the years 2007 through 2009, ad revenue for newspapers down 43% over that 3-year period. That's enormous, okay, that's huge. And obviously a newspaper does lots of things. Public service and information is perhaps one of the most important, but without the lifeblood coming through, that really affects how people at the newspaper are able to do their jobs. 13,000 full-time newsroom jobs gone, and they won't be coming back, I mean, as in a traditional way, during that same period. That's a lot of bodies. If anybody has friends or colleagues at the State Journal or the Cap Times, for example, here in Madison, it is a tough, tough place to be right now. And circulation, and these are national figures, I'm not picking on the State Journal or capital newspapers. Circulation down 16%. Again, a lot of us are getting our news from so many channels. On the television side, 450 jobs lost at local TV stations in 2009, and that comes on the heels of 1,200 the year before. Again, that's very significant nationwide. Interestingly enough, I have a TV news background, so I feel this pain intimately. With those staff reductions, the average amount of news goes up about a half an hour from the previous year. So you want to talk about doing more with less? That's doing more with less. Our stations in Madison right now, for example, very, very, very few people to put on those news products on Saturdays and Sundays. Crazy how small the number is. So, what's important? In my view, the most important thing, in my view, for me to do my job, is to make sure I have a good relationship, a good working relationship with the people who are in these outlets. Okay? Channel 15, right, the NBC local affiliate. I've been working with Ryan Lobenstein, he's on the desk. I've been working with him ever since I landed in Wisconsin. I have not yet met him once face to face. But when I pick up and talk to him on the phone, we know it's each other immediately. State Journal, Deb Ziff, higher education reporter. Channel 27, Jake Zimmerman in sports. Beth remembers Megan Sheely. He did a great coverage on Megan Sheely's senior year and all the different things that she does and did as part of her education. Channel 3, probably the biggest station in town. Rick Bloom's been on the desk there for very many years. I've been working with Rick ever since I got here. Cap Times, Todd Finkelmeyer, the higher education reporter. What we want to do is make sure what I want to do and what I encourage my colleagues at the college to do, have an understanding of how these folks work, especially now in 2011. How scary is that? They need us, and we'll need them. I have to know how they work. I have to respect how they work. Very importantly, I need to educate my colleagues at the college about how they work, okay? If I get for example, I'll get a phone call from Todd Finkelmeyer at the Cap Times and he wants to talk about something in the doctoral program, right? So I call up Chuck Taylor. I need Chuck to say, yeah, great, have him call me. I don't want Chuck to go, well, let's see, next week on Tuesday. It's not how they're working. It maybe was how they were working sometime, but on the print side, and for sure on the TV side, they don't work that way. They call up, they want me to help them get Chuck Taylor. They mean like in the next 45 minutes. Maybe they're already on the way. Hey, we're headed over there. You got somebody we can talk to? Don't you have Chuck Taylor? Yeah. Okay, so I need Chuck to say, okay.
Okay.
Another issue that I face is, I guess I'll say it's kind of humility, right? I'll have this sometimes from professors. Oh, well, I'm not really an expert. Well, yes, I can talk about political advertising, but I'm not really a political scientist. Well, you know what? If I'm in TV, and I know because I was, I need somebody to talk to me about political science and maybe the governor's campaign, right? Maybe it's about communications, truth in advertising, whatever the concept is, right? If Professor Beth John is a professor in communication studies at Edgewood College, she's an expert, okay? So I don't want Professor Beth John to be, oh, well, no, I really couldn't. I wouldn't be able to, I'm not asking her to stand up in front of a room full of her peers, fellow academics who are PhDs in areas of high specialty, right? I'm just asking her to help out our folks in the media. So I'll sometimes encounter that, and I will encourage my colleagues, and I would encourage you to think of yourselves that way, right? You're experts, you are. The other thing that what I'm getting at here, they need us and we need them. I have stories that I want to pitch, right? Happens all the time. Hey, we've got this cool new program. Hey, we've got this great student. Hey, right? So I've got stories that I want the media to come and cover us, or pick up in their paper, or run on the radio, or whatever the story is. The flip side is also going to happen, right? It hasn't happened too much to us yet, but it's inevitable. Bad stuff happens, okay? And when something really bad happens, it's a story. And it doesn't matter if I'm ready to cooperate with them or not, it's a story. And it's gonna be a story. So what I wanna be able to be in a position of doing is, I wanna know that reporter Beth knows me already. I need a relationship with reporter Beth for when the bad things happen. The other thing I'd like you to think about is, or another thing I'd like you to think about is, the speed with which bad things happen, okay? I was working in Fayetteville, Arkansas in 2000, right? 10 years ago now. The day that we woke up, went to the newsroom, started the day, and all of a sudden the scanner is going crazy. A graduate student has gone into a university building, upstairs, found the professor that was, in his world, ruining his life because he wasn't progressing toward the PhD, and he shot and killed the professor and then shot and killed himself. Whoa. It was horrible, horrible day, horrible story. So this is all going on, and the speed that events travel, that's the only thing I'd like you to think about, is how fast all that material starts to go. And this is 10 years ago. Okay, it happened right in Fayetteville, and we were in Fayetteville. We have a truck on the street in probably 8 minutes. We had the satellite truck on its way in less than that time. And by the time we were doing cut-ins on the air, I came this close to putting a photographer on the air. Right? That was the urgency, that's the sort of appetite for breaking news. Right? And this is 10 years ago. I had a photographer there, the truck was there, I was all set, I had my signal. And it was like, Taz, put the thing in, get on camera, I need you on camera. Because we were going to have the anchor interview the photographer, right? Thankfully, the reporter got there and we didn't have to do that. The other thing is, by the time I got back to the station after having been there, I was on the phone with someone in New York who had producers and talent on an airplane already, giving them directions so that they could communicate to their people that were already on the airplanes how to get from the airport to the television station, right? In time for like, you know, the 5 o'clock and the 6 o'clock and then the following morning on Good Morning America. So it's crazy fast. So as much as we want to control it, you know, we want to feel like we have some control. I argue the best control we can have is already have a relationship with your working press, wherever your market happens to be. In this case, in my case, it's Madison. Yes, ma'am?
I guess on the flip side, since you're now in a different sort of position, if something large happened, hopefully it would be something fantastic, I mean, you would hope that the press would immediately go to you as opposed to finding other people who would be on the scene, and so you could make sure the comments were directed in the right way.
I want to try to achieve that, absolutely. I mean, realistically, I know, especially for us, we're in a little bit of a different situation. So we're a private and we're a college, right? So I don't have to protect this young man from the media in my public school because he's 14 years old, right? So I can grab you, if you're on the sidewalk, hi, are you a student here? Yeah, boom, and you're on the air, right? So that's a part of it though, is you do want to be in a position where you're going to be the very first resource that they want to go to, or at least among the very first. I'll eventually get them the comment from the dean or from the president or whoever it is, but when the really bad stuff happens, I'll be the first one because the people that I work with are doing their jobs. And part of my job at that point will be to talk to them. Another one that I'll tell you about the importance of relationship, Joel Despain, reporter, Channel 3, used to be, now he's with the Madison PD, right? So Joel and I go back to 2001, 2002. So here comes his new role with the Madison PD. I'm driving to work one morning and the cell phone rings, I answer it, and it's Joel. And he said, well, we had a trespasser in one of your dorms and there's a couple of circumstances about that, so I just wanted to touch base with you, let you know that we're on it, and we're not going to put out anything before we talk to you first. And I'm like, wow, he doesn't have to do that, he's the police, right? He didn't have to do that. I'm like, wow, Joel, that's really great, thanks a lot. So Joel and I are working together on messaging of this event that you know what's going to come out, right? But what a great advantage for me to be able to walk onto campus. Here's all these squad cars all over the place, and I already know what's going on, so I don't even go near them. Because I'm like, if I walk over there and people see me standing around with the cops, they're going to know something's going on. This way I can maintain that good maximum plausible deniability. Oh, I don't know, but I'll check out what's going on, right? That was a weird story. The guy walked into a dorm and then walked into somebody's room that he didn't belong there. And somewhere along the way he managed to lose all his clothing. So that was a good story. So even as these big outlets are changed and changing and continue to change, we see, at least from my office's perspective, the smaller dailies and weeklies more and more important. They have such a sharp focus on local people, local community, local schools, that the Daily Jefferson County Union down there in Fort Atkinson, that becomes how you find out what's going on in Fort Atkinson and right around the area. I can find out what's going on in the nation and the world in Wisconsin off my phone, right? So papers like the Daily Jefferson County Union and the Mount Horeb Mail and the DeForest Times Tribune, they're covering local. So for me, that's great. For the college, that's great. We send them information for when their kids make the dean's list, make semester honors, when Beth John graduates. I'll send them pictures. They'll run photos. We'll send them pictures. So what am I doing there? I'm providing them a really great service. I'm giving them content that's really important for them, and it's really, really important for their readers. I'll talk to the paper in Wanakee, and Wanakee won't run something unless it's Wanakee. And I'm originally from the Chicago area, so I think of, I mean, I guess I have to confess, I sort of think of Wanakee as kind of a suburb. Nope, it's not. Not if you're in Wanakee, it's not. Even in the last 3 years in my office, that stuff has become really, really important. It's changed how we function as an office. The Wisconsin Covenant, we're not going to go into the political part of the Wisconsin Covenant, but here we had the students from Horicon come to campus. They love this story. Here's all our great kids, right? So we're focused a lot of attention now on these smaller papers, right? It's not as glorious. It's not the home run above the fold on the front page of the State Journal. Everybody saw the State Journal this morning, right? Cromery Middle School's on the front page. My son goes there. Will go there,
Yeah.
hopefully, in a week.
But this is, I mean, a recruitment tool for the small papers.
That's exactly, you led me right into it. That's exactly it. This is my sweet spot, at least on the undergraduate side. My primary audience tends to be in the smaller communities, smaller sized towns in the state of Wisconsin. So what do we do when the kids come to our campus? We give them t-shirts, right? Now, that revenue that maybe used to have gone to the new traditional advertising, I just moved that over. I'm a great t-shirt guy. These kids come to our campus, we give them t-shirts. This was really cool, this one on the top. I had no idea that they would immediately put them on. They didn't all, but many of them did, as you can see. So it's cool for the paper, obviously, it's a great photograph. They become viral marketers, if you will, right? So the biggest change, I would say, over the last maybe certainly 10 or 5 years. Our website, right? The old model was, I have a story, it needs to get out. I need to go to this gentleman's newspaper, so he will run it, so the audience gets the story, right? That's the old model. Now the model is, I've got a story, I'm putting it out, right? Hopefully your paper might pick it up. I mean, I want it to. I've got a story, I'm just going to put it out there. Is it on here yet? Yeah, record freshman class welcome, August 30th, under what's happening. I just post a news release on my own website, right? Several of us, do you get these, Beth? Several of us get Google alerts. Is anybody familiar with Google alerts? Go on to Google, you can look for the, they can, if they're going to mention my school, I get reports on it, that kind of thing. So I put it out to my channels, my list, my media list, via email, no more paper, right? I'm printing a copy of the press release from my own file, because I'm old school, right? But there's no paper going anywhere, it's all electronic. Madison.com picks up the story on Coach Alexander trying to join the rare 200-200 club. Record freshman class on wisbusiness.com. Todd Finkelmeyer picked us up. Is that it? Yeah. And there's some other places too. This was just on this one particular day. This is the one that came in on Tuesday. We get these every day. The other thing you'll get is, if somebody's talking about me on a blog, it'll pick that up, and this extends out a little bit too. So we become our best platform to deliver news to our primary audience. My primary audience, no disrespect to anyone in the room, is undergraduate prospects and their families, right? We're a tuition-driven institution. Undergraduate, full-time undergraduates, that's who we really want. And we want everything else too. So I would say if there's one buzzword that I'd like to have us think about or remember, authenticity, right? You, and Beth knows what I'm talking about, and you all do too if you've been on college campuses. Less so at high school levels, I'm sure. come to Edgewood College, we care about you, we have small class sizes, professors will help, all the things we like to say about ourselves, right? If that's not true, Beth comes out of that class, and what does she do? Whoosh! Right? She's on the phone to mom, or dad, or best friend forever, or, right? Man, they say that, but so-and-so's a real figure, right? It's instant feedback. If you're not authentic, you'll get found out so fast. It's instant. Which is what brings us to the idea of brand, right? Very simply, we use brand and promise on in our work at the college interchangeably. In other words, understand brand is a noun, understand promise is a noun, right? It's the single most important thing that the organization, in this case Edgewood College, promises to deliver to its major stakeholders. An effective promise is believable, important, and distinctive. Believable. It has to be accurate, otherwise it's just spin, it's just advertising. This isn't tagline, these aren't mottos, this isn't bumper sticker stuff. This is what it is. So when we talk about promise, we want to make sure we make a promise that matters. We communicate it, that's where I come in, and my colleagues. We live it, and we strengthen it. What are the stories at Edgewood College that illustrate what we're all about and what an Edgewood College education is all about, right? When folks from this program go and become the superintendent in Wausau, or the superintendent in La Crosse, or the superintendent or wherever, that goes a long way toward illustrating the power of this program and the meaning of this program. When our undergraduates get accepted into great law schools or medical schools or go on 2-year missions to try to make the world a better place, those are powerful stories, and those are the ones that I especially am on the lookout for. We've been working on the idea of clarifying our brand for about the last 18 months or so. I mean, very specifically and deliberately. We want to make sure we end up with a common platform to communicate to everyone using the similar language. It's not lockstep, it's not say this but don't say that. And also it helps us with a reference for making decisions. To what extent are we going to enter into online education, for example? If we're a place that's all about relationships and all about connecting, right? Where does the online component fit? Well, that will help us hopefully it will help us with those kind of decisions. So we talked a little bit about the media and how that changes and continues to change. We now deliver the audience. The best platform for telling my story is my website. Right? Others will pick it up. Yes, it's important to have relationships with all the media players in our market and beyond. We didn't talk about national media or regional media. But I'm the best storyteller I have. I don't mean me personally, the college, right? But it sure has to be authentic. That camera, anyway, sorry. It has to be authentic, absolutely, because you get found out so fast. It's the country music song, right? Rather be, what is it? Hated for who you are than loved for who you're not, right? You have to be authentic. Be who you are. You have to be you. You can't be everything to everybody, right? We're not a large, prestigious research institution. Yeah, we have research. We do research. Our students do research. They do important research. But that's not who we are. Now, surely, all of this stuff has generated questions or comments. Does anybody need chocolate? Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back to your promise
Mhm.
slide for a moment? Right there.
This one right here?
Yeah, you
Okay.
said you jump in at communicate your promise, you and your people. Who are some of the people involved in making a promise that matters? How does that, part of the process, what is that part of the process? How does that?
Well, trying to think of the best way to.
Part of,
Some of that is wrapped up in attributes, right?
mhm.
So, what do I promise about an Edgewood College education? 4-year degree? Professors who, will know you and you will know them, right? There's all sorts of different attributes. An important part of the clarifying the promise process was sort of boiling it all the way down to figure out which of those attributes is really at the core.
And who are the people involved in those discussions?
Oh, we had faculty, VPs, staff, and what we did, and I can certainly present on that too if it comes up. Over the course of several months, we mined data that we already have, and frankly, that any higher ed institution's already gonna have, because we have to report to the government, we have the NESE, the FESI, all sorts of, right, the research that you have to do. So we just mined that to look for what are the common themes, what are some of the common threads. We got ourselves to a point where we realized, okay, now that we've determined all this, all these themes and some of these attributes, we thought, okay, now we're at a point where we might need additional research, okay? So we fleshed out some of that, some of those attributes, in some cases added to, and we ended up with 19 attributes, okay? And then we used a guy up in Canada invented it. It's called max diff, maximum differentiation, right? Where you basically are taking attributes and you're weighing them against each other. And that's how we did the survey, right? Of these two things, which is most important to you when you're describing Edgewood College? So you're not saying, you don't get a chance to say, oh yeah, it's really important that it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. It's, here are two things that are really important. Which one is it, right? And you can't spoof it because it comes through and they run it against each other. It's a pretty sophisticated way to sort of get right down to the brass tacks.
And that went to everybody.
And that went to that went to
So,
faculty, staff, and students, and board.
That whole process then reiterated the outcome of authenticity that you were looking for.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. Which is why we did it that way. Because if we sort of start with, how are we gonna, let's figure out how we're gonna outmarket against all these people that are advertising, right? You can do that. It's just expensive, and then 12 months hence, you'll probably be about where you were before. So we're at the point now where we are like, okay, what are the stories that illustrate what it is we say about ourselves and who we are? That's what we're doing right now. We were at the question phase, sorry, or discussion phase, please. Yes, sir.
You talked about that you sometimes have to go out and pitch the stories you want the media to pick up. I'm sure, depending on how, and I'm not sure how Edgewood's website quite works in terms of who can post to it and things like that, but coming from the point of view of a department or a program and things like that, what kind of things do you look for when you're getting information from these departments? If they have a story that they want you to put out, what, if we're in those kind of roles, what kind of things can we do to get our department or our area's story told in our institutions?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it comes up a lot, so that's a really great question. I guess by way of response, I'd start with saying, I'm going to put my reporter hat back on. And it's gonna sound like I'm being mean, but some of my responses are gonna be sort of like, and so what, right? Why is that important? Why should I care? Why is it important to read? Those kinds of things. I'll look for, is there some sort of local element to it, for example? Having sat in that chair for a while, I also trust sort of, it doesn't help your question. I'll trust if it sounds sort of like a story to me, I'll take that certainly under advisement. I'm like, wow, okay, that's kind of cool, right? I'll listen to my sort of inner barometer when it comes to that. But it's, just new tends not to be as effective as we might want it to be, right? Some of the new kind of hot button sort of issues surrounding, maybe it's sustainability, maybe it's development, some of those sort of timely issues would be an indicator. The other thing we always look for, and frankly the media is often looking for, is what's something that's happening up here at the national level, right there, right? What's going on your campus that is an indicator of what that sort of national story might be. And then that also works in reverse. If I have a story of, a young person who's done something really remarkable with social media, for example, that might be an indication for me to sort of send it up the food chain a little bit. Is that helpful?
It does, yeah.
Yes.
How often would you say now, I mean, I know you've said that things are changing, so how often is it now that you actually do make a contact from Edgewood out versus just letting people find things on the website and whatever, that you call somebody and say, listen, we've got a great program here, or this student did this, or whatever, how often do you do that versus letting people just sort of find things out?
Very often. Very often.
And
because
how often do they take it and do something with it?
Not as much as I want them to. I mean, I'll be honest, yeah, not as much, but it's, I don't want to say it's a game, but it's sort of a, I want to make sure that Beth knows that the, freshmen are, Monday or Saturday is move-in day and it's a record high number that's coming to campus. I want her to come out, I want her to have her, cameras there to cover it. She might say thanks, thanks, we'll see what we can do. I also have to understand that, at that television station where I'm talking to, they might have one photographer working in the morning, and that's it. And then that associate producer might come in at 1:30, and then the producer might come in at 2:30, and the producer might do the 6 and the 10, right? And that associate producer might be gone, and by the time they're done, they might have 2 people left in the station, not counting the on-air.
What about a hotter topic? It could be a hotter topic. It could be something that's going on that's more important than first day of moving in, and they won't.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and that happens quite a bit. Yeah.
Something more important going on.
No doubt.
Katrina, I don't know. Something.
Right. No doubt at all. No doubt. That happens, more often than we want it to. But yeah, you have to be back and forth with the working media, and you also have to be realistic about. You have to be realistic about where their heads are at. I'll try to get a higher education reporter to come over to campus, right? And she might really want to, but I also know she's got an editor who's standing over her desk saying, "Oh, there's more important stuff." Sorry, I know you'd love to go over there, but there's more important stuff to do. So,
How often do they, or does it even happen that if you take a video and you could send the video to them, would they use that, would that footage be maybe a way to get in the door if they don't have someone to send out, or does that not?
video, I don't know, that's a tough one. I would say, I don't have any experience with providing video that actually makes it on the air, like that would be from the college. And I would say, by way of answer, if I had something that showed something that was really compelling, and you can sort of read compelling as in double quotes, right? It would probably have to be something bad.
Right.
I hate to say it that way, but it's probably true. If I happen to be rolling on something and somebody, I'm out at the boardwalk and 3 people fell into the Lake Wingra or something and it was funny,
Yeah.
maybe, but yeah, it'd probably have to be bad.
My wife's uncle just got, they had a bear come to their property.
Mm-hmm.
So she had a camera, and Uncle Dan thought that it was a still camera. It was a video camera. So she caught him on tape going, "Roar, roar," to the bear. And when the news came and the cops came, because they wanted to shoot a bear into the woods or wherever the bears live, they gave the tape to the news media and they put him on the news going, "Roar, roar." It's pretty funny, you know, but if it's funny,
Sure.
it'll make the Sheboygan News.
I'll give you a good example. Yeah, no, that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. Yeah, a perfect example. We have, because of, again, I credit the relationship that my colleague Dave Petroff has nurtured through his years so far with us. We now, today, and Beth doesn't even know this, we actually, okay, stop the tape, just kidding. We actually will provide content, sports content, to Madison.com directly. So that's, again, and that's very new. That's new in the last few weeks, where we will literally, our athletics website is extremely robust, right? So we will, instead of pitching content and hope that somebody picks it up, we have the keys, if you will, right? We can open up the room and set the story in. So that's fairly new. But I think that's an indicator of, you know, my colleague's professionalism. That's not something that everybody gets to do. And it's also an experiment, right? If we end up abusing it, we'll probably be like, hey, you know what? We gave that a try. It's not really working out for us. But I think that's pretty interesting. Putting our content into their outlet directly. So. Yes, sir.
How about media that gets really, really focused? So here we have now the Big Ten Network, TV station that focuses on Big Ten athletics. Any move at the smaller scale for something like that? So this is really focused program. It's only 11 Big Ten schools, and their programming, and they create some kind of, you know, shows about the university or whatever too, you know. But that's really very specific. You know, it's not ESPN, it's Big Ten Network.
Sure.
So what other examples like that are out there, do you think?
There's some of them, and I don't want to be disparaging about Big Ten Network, but my understanding of how that works from a business side is that think of some of that program as essentially commercials.
Yeah.
Right? The half-hour show on Penn State's really cool nursing program, somewhere in there, I mean, Penn State's providing the content, and my understanding, Penn State's writing the check for the air, so to speak. And we have a lot of that. It's kind of a funny thing. There's really I'll call it a cottage industry, and maybe it's larger than a cottage, where how they work is it's very interesting. They'll call the president's office, and we've heard from so many people that, you know, your president, and what was his name again? Yes, that's right. Your president is extremely well thought of, and well, we'd like to feature him in the upcoming journal, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, if you write them a big enough check, then they'll run it, right? Where we produced this great television show, and it's seen in airports and all, you know, lots of cable systems and the satellite networks, and for a small placement fee, we'll put you right into that show.
But again, with the Big Ten Network, there's got to be significant financial rewards for somewhere like the University of Iowa when they've had a good season, and all of a sudden, you know, they have a couple more night games than they ever had before because it's going to be on the Big Ten Network, not on ABC.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So.
Thankfully, Edgewood College is Division III, so we don't have to worry about all those. But that is, that's a lot of dollars flying around there.
Well, I saw on cable now, Brigham Young has a whole channel just for Brigham Young.
Notre Dame has their own channel.
And it's on our cable here.
That's because you're wealthy and you're just paying for the package.
Really?
That's what she gets in some ways.
Well, I mean, I guess that's helping make my point, except maybe amped up quite a bit, right? I mean, what's the difference? It's another website that has full motion video and sound.
Yeah.
So, same kind of thing. Yes, sir?
So the number one thing you want us to get out of this is create a relationship.
Boy, I would say so, yeah. Because I just, there's no way to avoid, a story will come up and we'll wish like heck it hadn't happened. We'll wish like heck it would go away. And it'll happen. And I want to be in a position where I already have a relationship with those people that are going to be doing the reporting to the extent that that's possible. If it's bad enough, I won't know any of them when they come blowing through the door, right? Think about the Arkansas shooting. The other thing I want to try to do is with my colleagues, right? Have a relationship with my colleagues such that I can be a resource for them as far as education goes, right? I want Chuck Taylor to understand me when I say, Chuck, this isn't about when it's a good time for you. This is about when it's a good time for the reporter, and it will benefit the institution if you can be the expert on the air. If they interview you, that's a benefit to the institution, and probably to Chuck too. But first and foremost, it's going to be a benefit to the media outlet, to the reporter who's looking at the watch going, I got 10 minutes, I got to make something happen in 10 minutes. So it's a relationship with the media, and it's also the relationship internally as well. People are a little bit on the same page, getting how it's all going to go.
So is it kind of a nightmare to start a new person because the relationships are so important? To have a new person come in to like your position, because if they're not from here, that they have to start all over and like call the TV stations and start a relationship with these people that they trust you, you trust them?
I don't think I'd characterize it as a nightmare, just in part because depending on where we are, now Madison is a little bit bigger, we're a state capital, we're home to the state university, right? Madison has a little bit less sort of turnover, but there's, if there's turnover on a corporate communication or, media relations side in higher ed, it doesn't hold anything to the turnover that you'll get in newspapers and television, right? So, you might be brand new and you pick up the phone to start the relationship with the Wisconsin State Journal. I might be brand new at the Wisconsin State Journal.
Oh, okay.
You see? Even if I'm not, it's okay. But I might be brand new too, or have been here for 3. Deb Ziff at the State Journal, she's the second or third higher education reporter I've worked with, and I've been at the college not quite 5 years.
Okay.
So, and the Journal Sentinel in Milwaukee, I don't think they've replaced Erica Perez. I don't think they've replaced Erica Perez yet. I could be wrong on that. So.
Any other questions for Ed? Well, let's thank our guests for a great presentation.
Thank you.
After teaching, there wasn't any email, there wasn't any internet. Social networking was face-to-face communication after work at a bar somewhere probably. Tweets were sounds that birds made. Phones were all attached to walls. We didn't even have a fax machine when I started Knowledge Unlimited. We had a vacuum cleaner, and the business next door had a fax machine, so we traded. We let them use our vacuum cleaner once a week. They let us use their fax machine when we had an emergency. So things have changed a lot. So to qualify first, I've only been in higher ed marketing for about 2 or 3 years, so I am not a know-it-all. But it really doesn't matter, because the stuff we're going to talk about, things that we're doing here for techniques now, could be obsolete in a few years. So markets change, tactics change, but there are some sort of underlying principles in marketing that are common to all organizations that are successful and all colleges that are successful. We'll talk about some of those. They'll never go out of style. Next, I'll talk about things the way we're doing them here at Edgewood that may not translate perfectly to your institutions, your organizations. So, word of warning, I guess. And we've only got about an hour, so this will be a pretty quick overview of what we've been doing here in the last few years here at Edgewood in terms of marketing our graduate programs. I hope to leave plenty of time for questions, but if you've got something that you want to get off your chest and ask right away, please do. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon on a holiday weekend, so try to make it as lively and personable as we can. So let's talk first about some of these keys to success, these sort of underlying principles. There we go. That we found successful here at Edgewood. First of all, your programs have to be mission-centered, and the experiences of students here have to be mission-centered. That's really important, but it's often forgotten by a lot of institutions, and you can see when they kind of lose their way sometimes. For me, that's in marketing. What we're looking for is the kind of atmosphere that we're selling in the classroom. What makes us different from other institutions? For example, we often tell students right up front when they come in to talk with us, prospective students, if you're looking for cheap, fast, and easy college degrees, this probably isn't the place for you. You can find that. You can do a Google search on cheap and easy college degrees, and you won't find Edgewood. You'll find Globe, you'll find Phoenix, you'll find others, online programs, but you won't find us. So that's not who we are. We're trying to sell a different kind of experience here. It's important for us to identify that and then have those communications flow through everything that we do. Everything the professors do, every message that we have in marketing, from every email to every discussion we have with prospective students. The thing we try to sell here is small class sizes, a curriculum that emphasizes values and ethics based on the Dominican values, a collaborative, not a cooperative kind of, or a cooperative, not a competitive sort of classroom atmosphere. But it'll be hard. We often use the phrase, you're going to work hard, but you'll get a degree you can be proud of. And so if you're looking for that kind of situation or that kind of experience in college, then this might be a good fit for you. We don't have to appeal to every single kind of student. But for someone who's looking for that kind of atmosphere, we want to be in the conversation. We want to be in the consideration they might have when talking with other colleges. We don't want them to not have a chance to talk with us because we haven't communicated we're out there. So we will play with certain marketing techniques to make sure we're included in the conversation, to make ourselves aware. But we're not going to spend the kind of money that other colleges do in marketing, like the Globes and the Phoenix. We just can't. They'll outspend us. We can't beat them at that game. And this is kind of also related to number 4, with be true to your brand. I think that's probably something that Ed talked about in the last one, in the last session. We take these values, these Dominican values, pretty seriously here. I can remember when I first came to start, my first job interview was at this place, and I parked in the lot. I was here a little bit early, and I looked at those signs with the justice, compassion, where are they all? Justice, compassion.
Truth.
It's either posted all over the place. Truth, justice, community, compassion, truth, partnership, and I thought, yeah, well, sure. Everybody has those, right? We had those in private practice too, in private industry. We got a community here. You want to be part of it? Fine. If not, there's the door. Shut up and get back to work. People have them, but they don't always take them that seriously. They're taken very seriously here. From every communication that we have with students, with every communication we have with prospective students, the relationships that you have with each other and with the faculty. I've never quite seen a place like this. A few weeks ago when school was starting, we had meetings. Faculty all got together with staff, and we spent hours talking about community. You might know that every year there's sort of one value that comes to the top of the pile, and we all try to think about that for the whole rest of the school year. This year it's community. And we spent hours talking about what community is, what community should be, how we can foster community at Edgewood College. And it's kind of uncomfortable because I'm not used to it. But it's very serious here. It's a thing that makes us different from every other institution. So you need to find that sort of niche, your mission, and then that's got to kind of just connect everything that you do in all your marketing communications, every communication you have with each other as well. Next thing, although that's really important, is we find programs that have to be successful, a clear connection to a career path. Meaning there's gotta be, for all this talk about community, a light at the end of the tunnel. There's some good benefit to you as a student if you come here. When we do that and we create programs that have that clear path to a career, we're successful. We have a new post-bac nursing program you might have heard of, where you can get a nursing degree in 1 year. Very intense program. It's packing about 3 years of study into 1 year. But people come for it and they're willing to pay for it. We had hundreds of people interested in it because they can see that $60,000 job at the end of that 1 year. When we do programs that don't have that connection to a career path, we struggle. Being a Catholic college, we have a Master of Science in Religious Studies. Right now, it's not very effective. We're looking at the whole program. Because it did not have any clear connection to a career, the credits that you earned didn't transfer into a seminary if you want to go into the priesthood. It was only to get a master's for a master's sake. Well, that's a nice thing, but how many people can you find willing to pay $25,000, $30,000 just to get that sort of personal growth? Not very many. So our programs to be successful have to have that clear connection. Next is important is do your research, and that's marketing research. Do your primary marketing research when you start programs. Primary research is going out maybe just on Google. Who are your competitors? What kind of programs are they offering? What are their price points? What are their niche? What's making them different? Are they trying to be really, really cheap? Are they trying to be really, really easy? Are they saying like Upper Iowa right now, running their ad campaigns you might see online, if you want more credits transferred, you are Upper Iowa. That's not us. That's not our mission. So you got to know who your competitors are, who is going to compete against you for this particular degree. Also secondary research. And marketing secondary research is talking with prospective customers, prospective students in focus groups, for example. Finding out, is this degree something they could use? Will it give them a clear career path and advancement? What do they want in this kind of program? You also talk with employers. When we go out to look at new programs, we look and talk to potential employers here. If you find people, if we generate these people with these degrees, are there jobs for these folks at the end of the tunnel? So you need to do that research. It's not just gut instinct. You know, one person comes up to you and says, you know, I heard one student say that if we could create a Bachelor of Science in criminal justice and do it for adults in an accelerated setting, we'd make a killing. Maybe. But I need proof before I'm going to stick a lot of money into marketing and creating that type of program. So you need to do that research. Next, stay true to your brand. Talked a little bit about that. And all roads lead to your website. We'll talk in detail about the website in a little while. But for now, realize that, and we know that every single prospective student, no matter what the program, is probably coming to look at our website at some point or another. It's our storefront. It needs to be clear, it needs to be concise, it needs to be easy to navigate, it needs to sell the programs, it needs to sell the kind of experience we're offering in here. Again, we'll pay some attention in a second, a little bit more to the website. For now, just know that it's really, really important. Also, there's no magic bullet. What that means is you just can't put up a bunch of t-shirts with a fancy sign and a saying, you know, and run them all over town and that's it. You need to try and use a mix of every single marketing tool that you have. We'll look at some specific here in a second. All those things working together, driving people to that good website will make it successful. And then test, measure, and test again. So every time you do a marketing tactic, we'll look at some P&Ls and how we measure success or progress here. You test it, you measure it, you change it, you test it again, you keep working at that. You have to keep adopting and changing, especially as these new tactics come in that you never even tried before. Did you get that for me?
Yeah, so.
Oh, you did. Excellent. Next, let's look at traditional tactics a little bit. Traditional probably isn't the right word. It's kind of like old school tactics. These are tried and true sort of mass marketing things that every college uses, including us. And it's the medium mix of all these things that's going to make it successful. Now for us, like I mentioned, we can't afford to buy a lot of television time, a lot of radio time, print, and every single thing that we'd like to get into. We have to, for all of these things, narrow our target. We have to be very specific about when we place print ads, about where we use TV and radio, because again, we can't outspend these for-profit schools. I've been told by a consultant once, we asked them, you know, how much money do schools like for-profit schools spend on advertising? And he said about 25% of their revenue gets plowed back in marketing. Here it's less than 3%. So we have to be very choosy and narrow our targets. We'll use direct mail occasionally, when we can get a good list. You ever see those things from Globe that come every, get those in the mail? I get, seems like every other month I get a direct mail piece from them. We can't afford to blanket people like that. But when we have lists that we can get maybe for nurses, we did this mailing for nurses a little while ago. I can buy a list of RNs from the state of Wisconsin Licensing Bureau for next to nothing. So that one makes sense. We can buy a list of another professional organization, we'll talk about in a second, is the Society for Human Resource Managers. They have a local Madison chapter. That's a good target for us because these are folks who may be interested in our degrees, but better yet are looking for, and they're charged with at their businesses, developing their staff. So they could recommend a staff person go to wherever to get an MBA. Or make sure if you're thinking about this degree, bring Edgewood into the experience. So we will send direct mail pieces to them. It's about 700 people. It's not a very large list. Makes sense. So if we can target that really well, we'll use that. But we can't afford to blanket 20,000 pieces to everybody in Dayton. Same thing for print media. We can advertise, and we will, in publications where it makes sense. You know, there's business publications we can advertise our MBA, and I'll use our MBA program a lot here for an example. Like In Business, like Corporate Report Wisconsin, the statewide magazine. You can also use things on the internet. We'll talk about those in a second. But we can't afford those. It costs us about, well, this is Corporate Report Wisconsin. I used to work here, so that's one of the magazines that I was on. And this, we will advertise when it connects again to the editorial content. That's how we narrow the target. So I'll look at their editorial calendar for the year and say, all right, what issues does it make sense for me to be in? Are they going to talk about executive education? Are they going to talk about continuing education? Then I probably want to be in that issue. But this little 1/3 page ad here is like $2,000. So we can't afford to do it every single time. So we'll do it when it makes sense. Or the audience for this one, this is a publication called Nursing Matters that you've probably never heard of because you're not a nurse. Pretty much every nurse in the state gets this. Published by the Wisconsin State Journal. This is one that we will advertise every single time in because it's an audience, and the audience is only nurses that we're trying to reach for our master's program. And so this one has a little ad. Black and white, because you can't afford the color unless they give it to us for free, which they do once in a while. This 8th page right there, or 6th page, is $800 a month. Again, you can spend a lot of money in marketing if you want to. Madison Magazine is not one that we would generally advertise in because while our students tend to come from Madison, the content here doesn't really relate to like as closely to MBA does for Corporate Report Wisconsin or In Business. But if they're doing stories about education, we will try as much as we can to become part of the editorial. So here's Dean Campbell being interviewed for this article on Back to School. It was in the February issues. You know, generally the February issue is not going to be good for continuing education programs. No one cares. It's Valentine's, but here his picture is. So for this one, we will advertise in that. So when it makes sense with the editorial connection, that's how we'll narrow our target there. Same thing for inserts. Inserts are sometimes direct mail pieces you just stick like in a local newspaper. Or Sunday paper will have them, but again, we can't afford that. But you can put one in the middle of the Times, you can put one in the Vermont Board of Mail, things like that. It might be a piece like this. Sometimes we can put these also in sort of shared direct mail packages. So it goes out with 3 or 4 or 5 different pieces in it to a very select demographic group. This is a piece we actually did do that for the MBA program, and it was a kind of a selected demographic group that we selected based on characteristics of particular mailing addresses. And we can narrow that down to, all right, these are people who are in their 40s or above. They are generally high income, we can tell that by neighborhood. They have kids that maybe are older, so now maybe they're more likely to go back to school. So if we narrow that target, that's a piece that we can put into a shared sort of demographic piece. Radio and television, we'll use a very, very little. Television's incredibly expensive. And again, it's sort of casts a wide net that we really can't afford. Radio, we can narrow the target by saying, all right, we will do maybe 10-second ads on NPR to promote an info session that we're doing. And we did one actually in July. Those 10 seconds sort of, they aren't really commercials, they're IDs, are $50 a piece. Again, you can spend a lot of money. We'll do short ads sometimes to promote specific programs, but we'll narrow the target there by picking our audience. So the MBA will advertise not on Z104, but we'll advertise maybe on one of the local news stations. And because most of our people work, we're not going to advertise at 10:30 in the morning. We'll advertise at the drive times at the beginning and the end of the day. Z104, on the other hand, might be good for some of our grad programs, the adult accelerator programs. Again, so we narrow the target by thinking about the demographics that we're reaching. Billboards we have used, not very often, because again, they are also very expensive. A billboard in the Beltline is $500 to $1,000 a month, plus production. So we wanted to target for the RAD program MATC graduates. That's a real good source for us to bring people over to kind of do the 2+2 thing. They go to MATC for a couple years, they transfer over here then to finish their bachelor's. So we looked for billboards that were real close out there by Truax. Couldn't find any. So we ended up actually creating one on one of those mobile billboards, you see with the back of the truck that goes around. And it just drove around MATC for about a month. And we got that as a package deal for doing some things on the radio. It's another thing that you can do right now. It's a buyer's market for advertising. So a lot of these companies will own print and visual and radio and billboards, and if you go in and say, if I take out this many ads on the radio, can you throw in sort of this mobile billboard for a few weeks? And a lot of times they'll say yes. And that's actually how we got the billboard. We wouldn't have done it by itself. Conventions, we will go to every single convention we can find where potential students meet. So we will go to other teachers' conventions, we will go to the SHRM, the Human Resource Persons Conventions, project managers, the American Marketing Association, any place where people are meeting who might be potential students for us, we're going to exhibit there. They generally don't cost very much. The hard part for us is staffing, because usually it's us having to go out and do them. The Dade County Farmers Market, the County Fair. So that's kind of tricky, but they're not very expensive usually if you don't have to travel, and we have actually a very cheap, very nice little tabletop little display that makes us look pretty good. It costs a few $100 and we can customize the pieces on that. So we'll go to all of those. Email we'll use once in a while, not a lot, because lists can be sometimes hard to get. So this is one actually that we did recently because we could target it, for a coaching class that the School of Education was doing for a class that was happening this summer. So I can get emails of teachers sometimes, direct mail too. We'll use them there. For the sustainability program, we started that. I mean, I can go in and create, and we did, a pretty extensive list of green businesses just by looking at Sustain Dane and their directory. And I take that directory and I copy one email at a time and create a database of sort of sustainability prospects. So we will use those when we can. This one in particular was sent by an outside firm. So you can send these yourself through like Constant Contact or programs like that. We actually sent this one through Econoprint. And the nice thing about the emails compared to things like television is I can get very, very quickly, very, very exact results. In 3 days, they can tell me how many got sent, how many were delivered, how many bounced, how many were opened, how many clicked through to our website, and emails of the 8 people that clicked through to our website. And then I can follow up with those folks individually. So when it works very well because it's really, really measurable, and that's something that we like to have here. Back to the other screen. Maybe just close this one. There. Telemarketing, a lot of colleges have, they're blessed with having the banks of telemarketers. And they buy lists, and you can buy cheap lists, and you just pick up the phone and you call these people, hey, you want to come and get an MBA? We can't afford to do that. And I'm not sure we want to do that. That's not really our mission, our niche again. That's not who we are. But we will use telemarketing sometimes when it makes sense. We hired a person in the MBA program to call all of our inquiries that we had in the last few months to invite them to an info session. And we're sort of just on a contract basis. And that worked very well. Info sessions, we still use those, although less. Traditionally, it's getting harder and harder to bring people here after work, which is one of the times they mostly take place. And we found, I think, over the course of time that what we were selling was info sessions, not programs. And so, well, we had one, for example, we did all the advertising for it. We did some print, we did some radio, kind of, again, hit all of those different narrow target groups. And we had about 35 people signed up for a RAD info session, which would have been a record for us. So we were all excited, it's going to be great. At 5 o'clock, it poured. Just poured. We had 8 people come. And we were surprised to get that many. So you can put a lot of effort into these and get nobody to come. So they don't work on themselves. Before I started, I think that's what we did. We did info sessions and that was about it. They're working less and less and less because it's getting harder and harder to get people here. But we'll still use them, especially for some programs, because it's like the MBA program especially seems to have people that are, they're shopping. I mean, they're looking at us versus Whitewater versus Marquette versus maybe Globe, and they want to meet people face to face. Whereas a RAD student comes in and says, I'm ready to go back to school and I'm coming here. And it's a lot easier to convert those folks than sometimes than it is the higher level, coming into higher level courses. So, next one. There are also some sort of non-traditional tactics. There you go. And non-traditional, I don't know, it's just there's newer things that we're trying and using effectively too. One is, again, I mentioned professional organizations. We will belong to all of them where it seems to make sense. Again, the SHRM groups, the American marketing groups, the WEACs, the ASWAs, every acronym you can think of. If it makes sense, we will join. They have varying policies about what they'll let their sponsors do. Sometimes they'll put your bronze sponsorship on their website with a link back to ours. Terrific. Sometimes they won't do that at all, but they will allow you to sponsor one of their networking events. So the Madison Chamber of Commerce, for example, we belong to. And a few weeks ago, they had one of their networking breakfast events here. We had about 70 people in these 3 rooms together. Those were presidents, vice presidents, people who didn't even know this facility existed. So it gave us a chance to bring them in here, show them off, and then all we had to do was pay for breakfast, and we got about 5 minutes at the beginning to explain a little bit more about Edgewood College. So for a few $100 worth of food, we met a whole lot of people that we would have had a hard time getting appointments to had we just been picking up the phone and trying to get meetings with presidents of businesses around this area. So that's a good source of leads. Corporate partnerships, we're playing with this, and we have one that we use for the MBA program that we're now expanding, where we'll go into a business like UW Medical Foundation is a corporate partner of ours, St. Mary's Hospital is, Land's End is, and we'll tell them that for every student that you send us from your business or your organization who finishes one semester, we will bring and give back to your business $1,200 when they start their second semester that you can use for anything you want. You can put it in a pool and give it to a needy candidate down the line. Just about everybody that's done this has just given it right back to that person as sort of a tuition reimbursement. In exchange for that, we ask them to help us promote their programs. So I have a little explanation of the MBA programs that I ask that they put in all their folders for new employees. Or they'll put on their intranet sites for human resources. They'll list Edgewood College as a source for continuing education. They'll let us come in and do lunch and learns in their businesses and help us promote those internally. That's the kind of access we can never get unless we're willing to give something back. So we'll give back that sort of scholarship arrangement. Some people don't. There's like TDS is a good source of us. They don't allow that kind of relationship because they don't want to favor any one particular institution, but they'll still let us come in and do lunch and learns with them. So you need to kind of build those organizations.
I'm sorry, this is something that Edgewood is currently doing or thinking about doing?
Currently doing.
With whom?
Right now, we have 7 partnerships. Land's End, St. Mary's, the Government Medical Foundation, African American Black Business Association, I'm not sure if that's the right acronym or exactly the right term. Let's see, who else?
You mentioned TDS.
TDS is not, because they
Not a partner.
don't allow us to. We just
Okay.
signed one with American Family. So we will look for those when we can. Other colleges have similar arrangements where they'll do preferred partners, they'll call it, and they'll give every one of those folks a 10% kind of rebate off their tuition for people that they send them in exchange for helping them promote the programs. So there's different ways to go about those. Minor alumni with, we send out emails to alumni all the time. There's a separate group for MBAs and others. We'll announce programs there. We'll try to ask them to send us referrals. We'll do everything we can, because word of mouth is still our best source of leads, to get the word out to all of our alumni, to just tell others about the program that they were in, to tell people that we have a new sustainability program, maybe they ought to think about doing it. Our alumni are our best source of leads. Always have been, probably always will be. Other things we've done, we have close relationships with the school districts here, where student teachers are going out, for example, and teaching in area schools. And we have a person who's in charge of those kind of building those relationships. So once a year, we get 40 dozen cookies, and she takes one to every single school with a little poster that we allow us to put in the teacher's lounge to talk about upcoming stuff happening in the summer they might want to take. Emily's been working on an idea for our RAD program to try to maybe sponsor 10th year class reunions, thinking that that's about the time that people that maybe didn't get their college degree quite, or maybe went to MATs for a couple of years, might be thinking about going back, sort of a benchmark. Will they let us come in and do a little speech, put a little exhibit in the corner in exchange for buying or paying for some of their meals? We've got a couple takers, but too far away from us now, but something we're promoting too. We've been focusing on veterans a lot. There's a huge number of veterans coming back right now, and their families eligible for benefits. We've got the Eagle Grant program you might have heard of. Where Emily's working hard on a bunch of things, trying to promote things to veterans. We bought 250 tickets to a Brewer game in July and sent veterans and their families over to a Brewer game. We were the sole sponsor of that. So again, just building relationships with these groups. That's how that word of mouth sort of travels. All right, next one. Now, there are new things, new toys that we're working on, things that I didn't have when I started. You talked a little about some of these. Web advertising, it's kind of like print advertising in some ways. Sorry. So we have same kind of thing in print. This is in Business Magazine. So we'll take out that ad in the corner there. And of course, it doesn't show up every single time. So you have to kind of, there it is, right there. And that's the problem with it. You don't get it every single time that it comes up. But you're guaranteed sort of a number of impressions based on the traffic to this website. And then this will link directly to our MBA page. And through some Google Analytics I'll talk about in a second, I can track where this came from. So I can tell how many people went here, clicked to our site. So it's, again, really easy to measure, and I'll show you exactly how that works in a second.
That's an awfully little Edgewood college. I mean, I could, right there is the only time.
Right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually like this design. I never liked buildings. Buildings don't sell programs. I like faces and stuff. Unfortunately, this was one that somebody else designed when I was gone for a few days, so it went up there and it's still there. We need to switch them out. And that's another thing you should do when you start putting these up, is every month maybe put some new copy up there, because people start ignoring things that they see them all the time. That one's been up about a month. It needs to be revised. And with that in mind too, a little bit more of a billboard effect of who we are. Go back to my slide again. There's another, there we go. Behavioral targeting is sort of a kind of an offshoot of space advertising that we're testing. It's a partnership right now that Imagine.com has with Yahoo. This is one of those scary things, a Big Brother sort of thing, that when you go to Yahoo and you start cruising around and searching things, Yahoo knows what you're searching. So they'll start, based on your searches, identify you in particular groups. So they have identified lists and lists of stuff for me. And I can buy then these groups. So there's a group that they'll identify as life stages group, education, college, and university. So based on a person's searches, they can tell that you're one of these people in this group. So when you go to Madison.com, the ad that shows up is mine instead of the Bridges Golf Course. So you pay more for it, but supposedly you're guaranteed better prospects. That's something that's coming down the line lately. Google AdWords, you might know what these are. You know, when you go to Google, you see those sponsored things on the side. This is searching MBA programs in Madison, Wisconsin. So over here, up here, you can buy those words. So when someone searches MBA programs from Madison, these are words that were purchased by this group. Some of those words are really cheap, less than $1 a piece. Higher education tends to have some of the highest prices, $5, $10, $20 for a click-through, if someone clicks through to their site. So you can really quickly spend thousands of dollars that may or may not be good. So if you want to do us a favor, go home and click on every single one of these. It costs these people lots of money, because every time that's clicked on, they have to pay. Even if you're there for just a second. That's what I'm kind of afraid of will happen to us if we start doing that. So we haven't done much with buying these kinds of spaces, and I'm not sure if we will, because I'm not sure if we want to be by these people. You know, we're not that group. I want to be over here. And if you scroll down a little bit, we'll talk about search engine optimization in a second. We are on the front page, which where everybody wants to be. And that's not easy to do. 6 months ago, if you did MBA programs in Madison, Wisconsin, we wouldn't have been on page 5. And I'll show you how we made those changes in a second. So you want to get yourself up. These are the people I want to be by. I want to be by the UW. That's who I want to be associated with and compared to, not Phoenix. Those people are not us, cheap, fast, and easy. Next one, go back to that slide again. We'll talk more about Google and things in depth here. Our web directories, these are like online catalogs. So I can go to, I have one up here that I brought up. All right, here's one called GradSource. There's another one called alleducationschools.com that we advertise the EDD program on. So these are places that, and these people, the GradSource people, will pay for a lot of those Google AdWords. So if someone searches MBA programs, it might show up as GradSource comes on. They go to that source, and then they can search within this website for MBA programs in Wisconsin, or any other of those sort of degrees. And then a whole list of them comes up. So it's like a mini search site. And we can pay them for having sort of our listing that's here. And it lists the program, it has pictures, it has background, and it links directly to our site. And through analytics then, I can tell how many people started here and ended up at our MBA site. There's other ones, the directories, where actually they can fill in kind of a request information on this page, and we get that, and we pay for each one of those individual leads. And one of them we're paying is about $50 a lead, which sounds like a lot, and it adds up quickly, but they tend to be fairly good leads too. We'll show you again how we measure some of those things. All right, back to my slides. Webinars, these are just online info sessions, essentially, where you've seen webinars before. We haven't done these yet. We're planning on doing one very soon, but it's coming down the line here. It needs some software, it needs some things that we don't have set up yet. And then all these social networking tools, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, blogs. Those are words that didn't exist 20 years ago when I started. We've been playing with these a little bit. We have a Facebook account, we have a Twitter account, we have LinkedIn accounts. We haven't done much for blogs, although there is something happening at the undergrad level. And we've taken out advertising. You can do advertising here as well on these. So I can, for example, do Facebook ads where if someone identifies themselves as a veteran and they're living in 535 to 537 area codes, when they go on Facebook, my ad can come up over here. So again, we just started playing with those. I really don't have a good sense yet of how well they're working, but it is possible. We are really emphasizing social networking in the next year. We're working with an outside company who's helping us set up, especially for the MBA program, a whole strategy. So I don't know a lot yet, but I do know a few things that we're going to need to do to make this work. The first thing is that you need to have content on these programs and on these tools that's good for an audience, not good for me. So I can't just go on there and promote a new program, an info session, or stuff like that. They'll see right through it as marketing. I have to post things there that have value to that audience. So, for example, I might post on the MBA one an article in the Wall Street Journal that talks about the benefits of getting an MBA and what effect it can have on your salary. Well, that's something they could use. I might post an experience of an alumni of us who just got a promotion because they got their MBA. And so they might walk through that sort of story. Telling stories is always good on a website. Since we emphasize ethics so much in the MBA program, we probably will have something like an ethical dilemma of the month, where a real world sort of work environment controversy, we post it up there and say, what would you do in this situation? And let people kind of share their ideas, much like they would in a classroom. The next thing you have to do to make that successful is make sure you're adding content to it all the time. The worst thing you can do is what we've done. Don't say as I do as I say, not as I do here, is start these things and then not put anything there. And they become dead. And ours right now are dead. And no one's going there because we're not giving them a reason to go there. So what we'll do when we start this is we'll take a whole kind of editorial calendar and we'll map out every 2 weeks we're going to add something here and here and here. We'll collect as much of that ahead of time as we can. So there's a plan in place to keep adding new content. It needs to be part of someone's job too, I think. And that's the reason why ours has died. We started it and it was nobody's responsibility to keep it up, and so nobody did because nobody had the time. So you have to allot 10 hours maybe of someone's time to monitor what's going on these, to add things themselves, to answer questions that might come up that would seem to make sense for them to answer rather than another audience member. But you need to make it part of someone's job description in order to make it successful. That's another thing to make it work. And the last thing, which is kind of the fun thing, is you got to be willing to give up control. I control all my marketing messages, but when stuff starts going up on these things, I can't control it anymore. If one of you goes in and posts something that's negative about this presentation, I can't go in and take that down.
Why not?
It's got to stay there, because people will see through that again. I would rely on someone else in the class to say, whoa, 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 I didn't have that reaction at all. And so you get this discussion going back and forth. If it's obscene, personal, then take it down. But if it's criticism, constructive criticism, or just plain belly aching, but it's your opinion, I've got to be willing to let that sit there and let that become part of the conversation and just let it flow. Now the benefit of losing that control is when someone says something good, it's real. It's not me coming on and saying, here, I got a testimonial for this class from this guy, and word for word, I put it on the website. Well, that's good, but it's not really real. So when stuff gets posted that's good here, it can be really, really powerful because it's something that's real. So I know that much, but we're just starting to use those tools.
So besides paying for, like Facebook, for example, if you pay for advertisement on Facebook, you pay for that. But if you don't pay for advertisement, it's free for you then, just like us.
Correct, just like you. You can set up, and we'll do it here, you can set up a business account separate from your own personal account. So Sarah, for example, has set up, and she's trying to set up a Facebook account for higher ed, for EDD, which is separate from her own personal account because you really don't, you want the birthday notices for the kids coming up on that one. So it'd be professional site only. But there's no charge to that, there's no charge to any of these things except someone's time, and that's not an easy thing to get all the time. So hopefully in a year, we'll have a lot more to talk about here than we do right now, but we're really made it a priority for the upcoming year. Okay? Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about your website. Like I said before, all roads, all those tactics, the traditional ones, the non-traditional ones, the social networking, drive people to that website. So you've got to really take some time to make that website as good as it possibly can. Now, how do you make it good? You have to write on that website like a direct marketer. So the worst thing you can do, and we've done this, and I'll show you in a second, if we're guilty of it, is you go to a website, you click on a program, and you bring up policies and procedures. Or they just take and cut and paste their graduate catalog and throw it on the website in a PDF. Ugh, it's just horrible. You have to write like a direct marketer does. Someone's selling something. You have to be brief, you have to be clear, you have to make it easy to scan. People don't read a block copy, they scan website copy. You've got to make it compelling and persuasive. You don't have to lie, but you have to be flowery a little bit. And you have to sell benefits, not programs. I don't want to sell you, here are the courses that you have to take in order to get your degree. What I want to sell you is the experience that you're going to have in those courses, working with each other and working with faculty. This is really important. I got a presentation once a guy did on marketing, and he said, the most important thing is on my next slide, and he brought up 8 times, people are patient, people are patient, people are patient, people are patient. That is the most important thing. There's this sort of 5-second rule that when you go to a website, you've got about 5 seconds to get people's attention and get them to click something else on the website or bounce off. I think that's probably closer to 2 or 3 now. It's maybe 5 for my generation. I sit down with my daughter who's a senior, and she's going to go to college, and we're looking at college websites. You know, we look at it together, and she's got the mouse in her hand, she brings up UW Lacrosse, and she's bouncing all over the place, and I haven't even a chance to look at it yet. So my 5 seconds is probably her 2 seconds. So you have to be compelling right up front. Now, the easiest way to kind of show you this, what's good and what's not good. This is on our website. I'm not proud of it, but it's there, and it's getting fixed. This is the special education part of the graduate program for in the School of Education. This is what you shouldn't do with your website. See, it's just a block of copy. It's not bad copy. It's just a repeat of a graduate catalog, but you can't scan it. It's not compelling. Nobody sits down and reads this. And it goes through the whole section. Now that's not bad. I mean, we have a testimonial. Be better maybe if it was at the top rather than at the bottom. But this needs some serious work. And it's getting that work actually. Before I got here, I looked at my email and I have a beta site I have to look at that we're changing this. But this is the way all ours looked up to this point. This is the way we're designing it now. This is our new MBA site. And you can see the difference right away. Okay? It's a lot more compelling. It's a lot easier to read. One of the things I had on there was give your people a lot of ways to connect, a lot of ways to respond. You can apply here, you can request information here, you can get a brochure here, you can apply over here. You can, at the bottom, there's contacts for, if you scroll on the bottom, there's a contact, everywhere on this page, there are spots for you to click to get in touch. See, what I'm looking for in a website is not just have someone look at it. We want to start a conversation. We want to convert them to taking an action. I want their names. I want them to talk with us. I want them to send a request information form. We want to get a two-way conversation going here, and I can't do that unless I give a lot of opportunities to talk to us. So we've designed all these now with more visuals. You saw the copy here before underneath. It's much easier to scan just by breaking up the copy, putting some different colors, different fonts, just busting this up a little bit, using this right-hand column, which is now everyone's doing on a website, because the extra column, rather than that special ed one, which just took off the whole thing. This is a lot easier on your eyes to look at. And if you're looking for something in particular, you'll find it a lot faster than reading all those paragraphs to finally find, oh, why Edgewood, and then click there. So all of our sites are sort of now being designed with this in mind. Another thing we're adding that's not ready yet because it's running into a technical nightmare is adding as much video as we can to the site. This picture right here will be taken up instead very shortly, I hope when it's done, by a video that we did where we went out and interviewed faculty and we interviewed alumni and we put it together in sort of a 5-minute presentation, so it's a lot more interesting. It's very easy to do. Have you seen these cool things? This is a flip camera. This is what we use for it. We just sat down in our office, we set it up, we just started talking. And you go back to your computer, you stick it in there, and the software it brings up makes it very easy to edit, and you download it to YouTube, and that YouTube video gets embedded right here, and it's just invisible. They click on it, they go to YouTube, and they stay on the site and come back. So it's really easy to add video now compared to what it was. And it doesn't have to be that crazy high quality. In fact, it's better if it's not because it's more believable then. So that's something we're trying to do too, is add video to all our sites. So you can see the difference between the two. It's like kind of like art. You know, I know when it's good when I see it, but sometimes it's hard to describe exactly what you're trying to do. But bust up the copy, use visuals, use video if you've got it, move some things around over here, give people a lot of chances to start a conversation with you when you set it up. Okay, back to my slides. All right, also pay attention to navigation. Think like a person coming to the site. So you're a prospective student. What do you want to find? Which should be easy to find? Degree requirements, faculty members. Make sure that those are things that you put toward the top so people can easily find the things they might be likely to look for. And when you play with these sites every day, and I do, you get used to, because you see them all the time, you know it's there, it's easy to find stuff. And sometimes it's easier just to show it to somebody who's never been there before and say, find a faculty. I want you to find a faculty member and see if they can do it very quickly. Offer a lot of opportunities to respond. I mentioned improve your search engine optimization. You know what that is and how that works? What's something we didn't do very well before that we're doing much better now? Like I said, like MBA programs, you wouldn't have gotten ours. You can spend a lot of money doing this, but you can physically change things yourself to make it a lot better. The searches will come up higher. Just by paying attention to the top title bar, to then that bar, to then here, to then here. So identify what you want your words to be when people come to search. What are the key words you think they're coming to look for? MBA programs in Madison? Probably. So make sure that MBA programs get up there, they get there, they get here, because when the robots come in and look at your site from Google, they want to see kind of a natural flow that makes sense to them. So you can just change those title tags or the meta tags that stand behind it in the programs and very easily bring this to the top a little bit higher without spending a lot of money on it. Talk about analytics for a second, I mentioned.
Has software that do that too for you?
Pardon me?
Has software that help you to improve your website too, you know?
Oh yeah, it definitely it gets you thinking about the content and okay, why are we, you know, I've looked at some websites or some title tags where the top says homepage. Who searches homepage? It's got to say something very specific at the top. And it makes you think about the keywords that people are searching for too, what you want to be noted for. My analytics, let me just show you very quickly. This is something we're just starting. Google Analytics is free, but it takes a lot of time to learn how to use it and find it. But what I can do is, and I can do these in real time, I can set up the time period I want to look at. It's very flexible, but you can get lost in the details unless you really kind of think about what you want to measure. This is a content report that tells me that MBA page I was just looking at, how many people visited that page in this time period right here, August 4th to September 3rd. It gives me the views, it gives me the bounce rate, exit rate that I'm trying to pay attention to. Where did people go here, how did they get there? I can look at navigation summary to find out where they studied. This is our page here. Okay, so what did they look at before that? And then where did they go after that? So I'm trying to get them to follow. I want them to go to MBA. I want them to go maybe to CY Edgewood. I want them to maybe say degree requirements. And then I want them to go to that request information form and fill it out. So there's sort of a natural path I'm trying to get them to do. I can look at, not just that, I can look at, let's see, content detail. There's so many cool things you can go through here. I can look at the words that they searched. to try to find my site, so I know which words I should be putting in my copy. I can yeah. All right, this one tells me which cities they came from, so I can tell where people are searching from. The best one that I like very much, that I won't take the time to find, is I can find which sites they came from. So remember that ad that was on In Business? I can look here and say how many people in this time period started that ad and came to my site. So then it makes it very easy for me to measure the effectiveness of the advertising that I'm spending instead of just guessing. Again, it's free, it's a great tool, but it takes a little bit of time to learn how to use.
That Google Analytics, how does it know to read, your page instead of somebody else? You have to set it up.
When you set it up, right, so I will search, you set it up for your whole entire site. So we have over 2,000 pages on our website.
Wow.
And I don't care about more than maybe 50 of them, because those are my graduate programs and I'm specifically interested in those. So I'm measuring just those. But the report includes every single page. So again, you can get really lost in thinking about how many people came to the home page. I don't care. How many people came to the MBA page, the EDD page, that's what I care about. Where they came from, what they do when they get there, how many bounced off, and then kind of measure those trends too.
And that, what you just pulled up showed how long people were on that page, and that was like 40 seconds.
That's a long time, if you think about it,
Well,
especially.
those are people that are interested, and
Exactly.
that's how long they took. That's
Yeah.
not right, to me. Yes, 2 seconds if you're not interested.
It depends on, yeah, it depends, if it's short, then you know you've got a problem.
Yeah.
If somebody comes to your page and goes, ugh, and they're gone, that's an issue. If it's a page that I'm trying to get people off too fast, all right, so I got a page that has all my graduate programs. So they click on prospective students, they go to this list of all graduate programs, business, education, sustainability. I don't want them on that page that long. I want them to find MBA, boom, get off of it. And if that's taking too long, then I've got to do something to that page to redesign it so they can get off of it quicker. I spend a lot of time on this, and kind of go crazy, but it's worthwhile because every single person is coming to that site to check it out. All right, very quickly, it's really important, I know you can't see this, so I'll show you some examples in a second. You got to measure your results. When I came and I started here, I looked for P&Ls. I love Excel sheets, they speak to me, I could see things in them. But we didn't have anything. And I asked, what did we do for info sessions? Did we do some radio ads? Oh yeah, I think we've done something. Well, how did they work? Oh, I think they worked pretty good. Well, do we have any proof? No, not really. There was nothing there. So one thing we tried to do very quickly was measure everything that we have. So I will measure, this is website views in the last month. I haven't got to conversions yet. Conversions is, have I made people request information or apply? Because I don't want shoppers, I want buyers, so I want to get to that point as well. So we'll measure that stuff. We'll measure, this is a P&L for an open house that we did at the end of July. So we'll take all our things that we did, and then we'll fill out forms when we get there so people tell us how they heard about it. All of our expenses, it's a very simple form. If you want me to email you this form, I'd be happy to. And eventually, I want to know what the cost was for every person that came, what the cost was for eventually, this has happened, I don't have this yet, application and enrollment. Because I want to take this info session and be able to compare it to every other source of advertising stuff that we do. And say, well, this one's working really good, let's spend more money here. This test is not working, let's get rid of it. So in order to do that, I've got to measure all that stuff as effectively as I can. So it's really important to measure. Very quickly, how am I doing, time-wise?
You've got about
5
5 more minutes.
All right.
But you take another 5.
I want to talk about one specific kind of case study of a promotion that we did, because it kind of blends with some stuff that Ed probably talked about branding. We did a promotion last spring of 2009, called the Educational Stimulus Program. This is right when the economy was in the tubes and everyone was talking about passing the stimulus plan. It was everywhere. So we did our own. And what we did was offer $21,000 scholarships. okay? Which sounds like, so what? Everyone knows Edgewood is expensive anyway, so who cares if you take $1,000 off, right? What made this unique was, in our attempt to make it viral and get promotion for it, was you could use this scholarship. We just did a drawing, you came in and entered, and we just drew it arbitrarily. You could use it anywhere. You didn't have to use it here. So that's how it fit our mission. We think that going to school is so important for you, for this economy, for families, that we're willing to pay you to go anywhere, not just to Edgewood. And that's what got people's attention. If we had just announced $20,000 scholarships, you can't get PR for that, because it happens every day. No one cares. But if you say you can use it anywhere, now people think, they start scratching their head. And we had people internally scratching their head, trying to figure out why we were paying people to go to school somewhere else. But if we hadn't done that little twist, we wouldn't have got the attention. So we got, this is a story from the Wisconsin State Journal. That would have probably cost me about $2,000 if I had to pay for the advertising space, and no one would have looked at it because it's an ad. Here it's editorial. It got me mentions on WKOW's website, on the La Crosse Tribune's website, State Journal's website, the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel's website. I couldn't have done that had we not had that offer with it. We set up LinkedIn accounts, we set up Twitter accounts, we set up Facebook accounts. It was our first attempt to get publicity that way. We got some nice television. I did buy these, but this is kind of cool.
Staying competitive in a tough job market often means a return here to the halls of higher education. But in today's economy, many adults can't afford to go back to school. Edgewood College understands. And WPOW-TV is proud to support the Edgewood College Education Stimulus Plan, the chance for one of $21,000 scholarships to almost any Wisconsin college or university. Because the best personal stimulus plan is a good education. Visit edgewood.edu or WPOW-TV.com for scholarship details.
Now, we paid for part of that, but that's better than an ad, because I got like an endorsement from one of their anchors who's standing in front of our building, connecting to our website. And we couldn't have done that had we just given scholarships to people to go here. So it was our kind of attempt to go a little viral and do something a little bit out of the ordinary.
So the $20,000 that came from the federal government part of the stimulus?
No, it was our money.
Yep. And how much did you spend on marketing?
This is what's unusual. Well, here's I have a P&L, of course, because that's what we do. All right, so this was the P&L for the program. We got about 700 entries. We had about 120 inquiries, because an entry is not an inquiry. Someone just fills out an entry to the contest. They aren't necessarily interested in coming here. So we wanted to convert them to prospective students. We spent about $21,000. That includes the scholarships awarded and all that we spent here. That translated to about $175 per inquiry. That's a little higher than we would have liked, but we have spent more than that to get an inquiry if it's a good one. What's interesting about this is we gave away 20 scholarships, only 6 of them were redeemed, and the time period's over, so 14 people won them and never used them.
Oh, man.
And 2 of them...
Can you do another one?
That was part of the difference. It had to be an adult student, it couldn't be an undergrad. And it had to be someone who hadn't been in school in the last year, because we're trying to get people to go back to school rather than stay in school. And we picked up 2 students that came to Edgewood. So if you think about the tuition they paid to come here, which they may not have paid before, one was in accounting, one was in nursing, it's probably more than paid for this amount right here. So revenue is not on here, but if it was, it would probably more than cancel out those expenses.
But for those 2 students that you got, you wouldn't normally spend $10,000 each to get...
No, they weren't that good students.
Oh, damn. You know, really, when you look at it, you spend $10,000 per student to get them in the door.
If you
Is
look...
that effective marketing?
No. Not when you look at it that way. But these are inquiries that aren't just, they don't just last for the time of this particular promotion. They're still in the pool, we're still talking with them, you're still building, there's sort of side benefits here with all that marketing that we got exposure we would have gotten before. Generally, if you look, and ours is a lot less than this, but most schools kind of look at $1,000 for the cost of an adult student. So if I could get, on average, if it cost me $1,000 to bring a student in here, it's gonna be worth it. Ours is right now at about 380. It's much less than that. We can't afford to pay 1,000. But that's what all these things consider, not just this particular promotion. So it did some things for us, but again, this cost me $20,000 for maybe if you thought about just those 2 students, but those 2 students will pay more than that in tuition. So I came out ahead on this actually.
It'd be interesting too to follow up with those 2 MATC students to see if they transfer back to Edgewood or continue on. Yeah.
And I talk with them quite a lot, because I want to use them for testimonials to get them up on the website about the program too. Get them on to do post things on LinkedIn and, go through that whole social networking thing. And I know one of them was definitely interested because he was taking kind of the pre-nursing classes and hoping to become part of the post-bac program.
Are you going to be doing that on a regular basis?
Probably not.
No, okay.
The thing that made it was pegged to a news story.
Yeah.
Everyone was talking about the stimulus. Right now, it's like no one wants to talk about stimulus. If anything, it has a bad connotation to it. Back then, at least there was some hope that it was going to work. Now, I'm not sure I want to be associated with the word like we did back then. So, we probably will not. So, you try these things, you measure them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But the important thing is that now if someone asks how it worked, I can tell them exactly how it worked, how that compares to other things that we do.
What are other private colleges using in the same field to create the same type of things?
I've never seen anybody do anything like this that I've seen advertised, that actually would pay you to go somewhere else. They have their own internal scholarship programs, but I've never seen anything where we'll give you money, use it anywhere you want. Go to MATC, fine, I don't care. Just go to school, it's good for you. It's good for the country, it's good for the economy. Now, if you want to take a really kind of, crass point of view, I could have put $20,000 in the billboard instead. And what would I have gotten for that?
I was thinking
2
more
months
like
on the Beltline? Yeah.
what Perturbo's doing in marketing. Private small colleges, what are they doing in their general marketing area to attract people when it comes to new technology? How does that compare with your strategies?
Most of the nonprofits are very much ahead of us in terms of social networking and things like that. The rest of those colleges, talking about like Viterbo, probably do exactly what we do. They may have a different mix. They may do more internet marketing versus direct mail versus print. But everyone is sort of playing with all of those different tools, but to different degrees. I think Viterbo, great school, what we have a hard time competing with them is price. We just can't match for our teacher education programs the price. If someone wants to get a special ed certification, a lot cheaper to do it through there than it is through here.
The price was the one thing that on your webpage was the biggest point. I think the webpage does a great job. I'm a big Edgewood fan, I'm still here. But I had 3 or 4 of my friends from my undergraduate, and I was trying to drag them, come with me, let's do it together. Well, how much does it cost? It was like pulling teeth to try to get out how much it costs to go here. Why can't you just tell me how much it costs? You're gonna have to tell me anyway, because I'm gonna pay it. Tell me, I'm looking on the webpage and I couldn't find it. I even called, I called the registrar's office. I'm like, can you please just tell me how much it costs? I realized that an expensive school, putting the price out there is not a selling point, but you're gonna have to tell me anyway, so.
All right.
Tell me.
Receive financing, when you click that.
It's late now. I'm gonna get the bill.
I know. It goes to a page. Doesn't even have it there.
Okay. Point
I totally agree with you.
Right there, way at the bottom.
All right, so there it is. It's there.
If you're scanning here.
It's also wrong, because it's 719 now, but this isn't a page where I can.
Yeah, but if you show that right away, people are gonna get scared. They want that you call them, and they have the chance to talk to them.
Every college plays this game differently.
Yeah,
I understand.
Personally, I like to be honest.
Yeah, no.
This is what it costs, and it's worth it. Now, here's why. But I don't want it to be the first thing that they see, because I want them to see it's worth it first before I see the price. But it ought to be easier than that to find, and that drives me nuts when I'm talking about primary research, because I'll go to Globe's site and you cannot find for the life of you what their costs are. And they will not tell you until you will request information and someone calls you. That really drives me crazy. Because that gets them in the pool, and it means that I'm gonna get an email and a call every single week for the next 3 months until I tell them to buzz off 8 times. It's almost like I've been telemarketed for a condo or something. I don't wanna get that far. But it ought to be, it's not a secret. The basic message is, yes, it's more than some other schools, but yes, it's gonna be worth it, and here's why.
I agree.
But it ought to be more upfront. Now, the RAD program, which we charge less for, we'll put right to the top. Because the image people have of us from the outside is, I can't afford to go to Edgewood, it's too darn expensive, everyone knows that. So we want to tell them right at the top of the page, when you go to there, here's what it is, compared to everybody else. Because we know when they do that, they'll find it pretty surprising.
We should
So it's
also
kind of a
say
different
that it's
psychology.
not a typo, because lots of people think it's a typo.
Yeah, they think it's too low, or else we should just raise it.
What kind of special marketing do you do for this program?
For EDD, you know, very, very little actually. I have a meeting with Sarah next week to kind of pump things up, but because our budget is kind of so limited that it's sort of the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. A new program gets a lot more resources than an established one. And in the last, few years, they've been very successful themselves with making the program grow through word of mouth, through going to visit folks outside the state, holding info sessions at schools, and just kind of on their own building it. So frankly, I've ignored it, but that's not gonna happen anymore. It's gonna get a lot more attention in the next year, because it's a program we wanna be noted for, and it tells a lot about our school that we have these kind of programs here. But up to now, we haven't really done much. So if you go out and just tell everybody you know to come here, we could save a lot of money, and I'll give you $100, because another thing we have is a referral program. I didn't mention, but it was up there. If someone who's an existing student goes out and recruits a new one for any program, and that person stays in school for, I think it's 2 or 3 weeks, the person who referred them will give a $100 gift card to the bookstore. Buy some swag or buy some books with it or whatever. So another thing we'll try to do, and there's some rules for this you have to be careful with. You can't give $1,000. I think the limit is something like 200 or 150. So you have to be kind of careful. There's some federal rules, but that's another thing that we'll do.
Tom, I had a question about the website and how you work to kind of balance out the marketing role of the website versus the sort of institutional role for current students and instructors and things like that. I think Edgewood's done a pretty good job of kind of making it so it's not all brochureware and not all, for current students. How have you had to work internally with the college to kind of balance those things out?
That's a good question, and Ed has spearheaded that very, very well. We've tried to make very clear that those pages of our website, the www.edgewood.edu, are for marketing. They're for outside people coming in. It's selling the program, it's not for current students. When you go to Express, even the environment even looks different. Top looks different, it's a different place altogether. That's more built for current students. And we really don't want them crossing very much, because there's not a whole lot on the marketing side for current students. And if we send prospective students to Express, they'll just get confused. Or there's stuff there that just doesn't matter. Or there's, that's where you find the catalogs and stuff. We really don't want them to read the catalogs. We want them to read our website. But it's a thing we struggle with all the time, to try to kind of play in both worlds and keep both worlds happy, but we do it by having sort of those two different environments. And if you go to a lot of other school websites, you can tell they have the same thing. But they're trying to, and then here we've got another layer with all the departments have their websites. The School of Education has its own website. So you can go there, and then it really gets confusing, and you start losing your place, and navigation becomes a real problem.
You have time for one more question? If not, let's thank our speaker.
Or how to design a website, or how to add video. He's got a really lot of good examples for kind of the best practices. Staymates is another company out of Iowa that's more of a strategic in nature. Their website has good white pages and things talking about issues related to marketing and higher ed. Education Dynamics is another one that's more kind of demographic.